After the divorce, I was tricked into joining a dating show, and my ex-wife panicked. Chapter 080 Shooting oneself in the foot. The audience in the live broadcast room. Hearing Shen Yu's philosophical words, they all fell into deep thought. After a long while, comments in the live broadcast room came out in twos and threes. Fuck, Shen Yu is so amazing, and his summary is so good. There is no standard for love, and the standard is reserved for those who don't love. This sentence is really right. The book says that love is the fall of free will. I have never understood what it means. When I heard Shen Yu's words, I understood it instantly. No, although Shen Yu is right, this guy is too cunning. What we want to know is which female guest he is interested in. Damn, brother, if you didn't say it, I really didn't notice it. Shen Yu is really smart. The next questions Mengder intercepted. All of them were about Shen Yu, and they were all emotional issues. Shen Yu was almost crying. He didn't expect that his suggestion would completely put him in trouble. Looking at Mengder, who was smiling secretly. Shen Yu's face was dark. He snatched the controller from his hand, and said unhappily, "You are so unlucky, did you do something?" Seeing this, Mengder quickly explained. "Shen Yu, you can't accuse a good person, this is all real time, if you don't believe it, come and do it yourself." Shen Yu naturally didn't believe it. The next result made him completely fall into darkness. After pressing it several times, the results were all about himself. He immediately threw the controller on the table and said with a depressed look, "I have answered more than 10 questions in a row, and you haven't made any move. This is too unfair. No, we must change the rules. First, designate the person who answers the question, and then select questions about him from the comment area. Otherwise, I won't play anymore. It's too hard to handle." Wang Ming laughed and scolded when he saw this. "Who made you so popular? I'll go first." He picked up the controller from the table and started to operate. The scene was on track, and Shen Yu finally relaxed. Unlike at the beginning, he didn't even have time to eat a hot meal. After interacting with the audience for more than an hour, this ended the interactive session in the comment area. The next second after the event ended, the 8 people, including Shen Yu, all breathed a sigh of relief. This audience is really too difficult to lead. There are so many problems that are hard to guard against. Even under the bombardment of the entertainment industry, they, who are at ease, can't help but feel a little tired. When Shen Yu saw that it was getting late, he immediately picked up the guitar placed aside. Wang Ming smiled and stopped him. "Old Shen, you sing last. If you sing first, no one will dare to perform after you. Isn't this a pure dimensionality reduction attack?" Guanmingzhi next to him put his hands together and said with a pleading face, "Brother Shen, please spare me." Shen Yu put down the guitar and sat back again, making a gesture of invitation. Wang Ming saw this and immediately stood up and shouted, "Let's go." The next second, Guanmingzhi and Shu Cai stood up and came to the temporary stage with Wang Ming. Seeing that the 3 of them picked up the microphone, it was obvious that they were going to sing together. Shen Yu laughed and scolded, "Damn, aren't you guys cheating?" Wang Ming waved his hand and said innocently, "We are not cheating, and the rules don't say that only one person can perform." Then, Wang Ming looked at the camera and said with a smile, "Today, the 3 of us will bring you a song called Brothers. I hope you like it." Mengder, who was standing aside, suddenly turned black when he heard it. He secretly sighed in his heart, did these guys forget? This is a dating show, not Extreme Challenge, what the hell is Brothers? It would be better if Shen Yu was crazy about this show. How can it be contagious? However, it must be said that the 3 of them all sang well. While Shu Cai sang the lead, Wang Ming and Guanmingzhi's voices were not covered up. In addition, the most important thing about this song is the atmosphere. After the song was sung, everyone's enthusiasm was mobilized, which was a good start. After Wang Ming came down, he patted Shen Yu on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Old Shen, how about it? The 3 of us sang this song well, right?" Shen Yu was also very supportive, and he gave a thumbs up and said with a smile, "The singing is fine, we can definitely form a group. Old Wang, you are preparing for the comprehensive development of film and television songs." Wang Ming said a little shyly, Not that, I have no plans to mix in the music scene for the time being." After the 3 performed, Luo Zhi hesitated for a while, then stood up and took the peeper from the side and came to the microphone. Seeing this, Shen Yu and Wang Ming stopped chatting and focused their attention on Luo Zhi. After Luo Zhi sat down, she adjusted the microphone to a suitable position and said, "I am bringing you the song Kai Ling that Shen Yu sang at noon. I hope you like it." As soon as she finished speaking, everyone was surprised. The audience in the live broadcast room were also surprised when they heard it. When they saw Luo Zhi holding the peeper just now, everyone thought that Luo Zhi would play a peeper solo like the day she first arrived. Although Luo Zhi's peeper skills are also very impressive, they are too elegant. Many audiences who are used to listening to pop songs do not reject this kind of pure music, but they can't really say that they like it. Moreover, in the afternoon, Luo Zhi's singing of a few lines of opera, like the lingering sound, kept wandering in everyone's mind for a long time. When everyone was enjoying it, the singing stopped abruptly, which immediately made everyone feel a strong sense of loss. Now that they knew that Luo Zhi was going to sing the song in full, they sat up straight, looking forward to it. Luo Zhi did not disappoint them either. She gently plucked the strings of the peeper with her right hand, producing a melodious sound. The next moment, Luo Zhi's heavenly voice came out. It was less heavy than Shen Yu's, but also more ethereal. It was really like an ancient actor. In his spare time, he sat on a recliner and hummed a little tune casually. In the apartment of the Magic City Drama Academy, after Jinyue saw that his senior sister was singing this Kai Ling, he immediately rushed to his mother's room in 2 steps. He knocked on the door and walked in without waiting for a response. In the bedroom, a middle-aged woman in pajamas with her hair casually draped behind her head was leaning against the head of the bed reading a book. After seeing her daughter rushing in, she said helplessly, "Can't you slow down a little? I don't know whose temper you inherited. Your father and I are not like you. Remember to remain calm even when the sky is falling." "Mom, my senior sister is singing the song Kai Ling that Shen Yu sang at noon." Before she finished speaking, the middle-aged woman on the bed had stood up at some point, snatched the phone from her hand, and stared at the screen intently. Chapter 081 The aesthetics of our ancestors are the best. After Luo Zhi finished singing, Shen Yu and others did not hesitate to give their applause. After listening to the song, the audience in the live broadcast room were also intoxicated. The comment area became lively again. "Oh, it's really beautiful, especially the opera voice. How can such a sound be produced? It's really better than the master. This time I declare Luo Zhi the winner. I thought Shen Yu was already invincible, but I didn't expect there was another master. Luo Zhi and Shen Yu are really a good match, not only in appearance, but also in talent. It's really a match made in heaven. Please make sure to lock them together." Luo Zhi put down the peeper, smiled and sat down next to Shen Yu. Looked at Shen Yu with some expectation. "Ayu, how was my singing?" Shen Yu said with some emotion. "I thought I sang pretty well, but when I heard you singing just now, I found that it was still a little bit worse. I like the charm of this kind of opera," Luo Zhi said with a smile. "With your talent, this is not difficult. Your opera singing is actually already good. You can develop it by going to the theater more often." Shen Yu nodded and looked at Luo Zhi and said, "Luo Zhi, I think it's better for you to sing this song. People will definitely accept your version more. You are the most suitable." Luo Zhi's face changed immediately after hearing this. She waved her hand, fearing that Shen Yu would misunderstand her, and hurriedly explained. No, you should sing it. This is the song you wrote, and you sing it very well." Seeing Luo Zhi fidgeting, Shen Yu meant that she might have misunderstood. Hurriedly comforted her. "I don't mean anything else. You know, you will definitely sing this song better. Opera has been silent for too long, right?" Luo Zhi fell silent instantly. Shen Yu's words went straight into her heart. The opera culture has been declining in recent years. Many talented young opera actors simply don't have enough stage to show themselves. After all, the opera troupe doesn't always have plays to perform. Moreover, many opera actors take turns to perform. After a while, Luo Zhi looked up at Shen Yu. "Thank you, I will definitely not let this song down." Shen Yu smiled and said, "We don't need to talk about this." Luo Zhi nodded heavily, and the smile in her eyes was about to be pulled out. At this time, seeing Jinyue after the two chatted. She couldn't restrain her jealousy. As soon as she opened her mouth, the audience in the live broadcast room could smell the strong sourness. Have you two agreed? I'll go on stage to perform. After hearing this, Luo Zhi was like a frightened quail. Her face turned red. She lowered her head and looked at her toes. Shen Yu smiled and replied, "It's agreed. Miss Jinyue, please start your performance." Although millions or even tens of millions of people usually call her a beauty or goddess, Jinyue couldn't help but feel shy when she heard Shen Yu call her that. The jealousy she felt just now had been thrown into some corner. Like a breeze, she came to the stage with light steps, and said with a smile to Shen Yu and others on the camera, "This time I bring you a dance. I once filmed a play in Xinjiang province for 3 months, where I learned authentic local dances. This is my first time dancing in front of the public. I hope you like it." Although Jinyue said that she danced in front of the public, her eyes were fixed on Shen Yu. Anyone with a discerning eye knew that she danced this dance specifically for Shen Yu. Luo Zhi, who was standing by, saw that Jinyue was so bold, and her hands unconsciously pinched her thighs. She instantly became alert to Jinyue. This Jinyue was really too persistent. She really looked like she would not give up until she achieved her goal. She was not willing to give up even after being frustrated more than once this time. As the music with ethnic characteristics of Xinjiang province sounded, Jinyue's perfect and slender figure began to dance with the music. The characteristic of Xinjiang dance is its brisk and dynamic rhythm. Dancers, accompanied by drum beats, attract the audience's attention with brisk steps and agile postures. With some shoulder shaking, hip swinging, rotation and other movements, the dance is more colorful. Jinyue is like a dancing butterfly, crazily releasing her charm. Wang Ming and others can't help but indulge in it. Infected by the enthusiasm of this dance, they cheered crazily, and the scene suddenly became extremely warm. In the live broadcast room, seeing Jinyue's passionate and unrestrained dance posture, many viewers also exclaimed. The comment area was immediately flooded with words. "I told you that our ancestors didn't do it for those few grapes, but you still don't believe me. Sure enough, our ancestors' aesthetics are top-notch. Who wouldn't be confused? Hee, now you know how good we are in Xinjiang. Everyone in Xinjiang is good at singing and dancing. The beauty upstairs, you're going too far. At my Weishin, I have to verify it. No, brother, the beads on your abacus are a bit too loud. I can hear them in Jin province." After the dance, Jinyue's forehead was slightly sweaty. His breathing was a bit rapid, but his face was full of excitement. Wang Ming and others saw her stop, and they all gave warm applause and cheered loudly. Even Luo Zhi and other female guests couldn't help but applaud softly. It must be said that Jinyue's dance was really great, and it instantly pushed the atmosphere to a climax. Next was Zhu Zhi. As the top star of the new generation of female group in my country, she was also familiar with that kind of popular dance. Although her ankle was injured 2 days ago. Although she recovered well and went hiking to see the waterfall yesterday. But she couldn't use too much force after all. But even so, a hot dance attracted everyone's attention, causing Wang Ming and others to scream constantly. There was no way. Her figure was the biggest killer, it was really too foul. Coupled with this exciting female group dance, it directly released her charm to the maximum extent. Which man could withstand such temptation, unless Liu Xiaohui was alive? Jinyue and other female guests looked at Zhu Zhi, who was radiating her charm on the stage. Then they looked down at the scenery on their chests and couldn't help feeling a little ashamed. They thought to themselves, what did this girl eat to grow up? How could she be so well nourished? Chapter 082 Window. After the dance, Zhu Zhi bowed slightly to the camera and slowly walked off the stage. Wang Ming and the other two turned into applause warriors again, giving their applause as if they were hired for 200 yuan a day, and they were particularly hard-working. After Zhu Zhi returned to his seat, he glanced at Shen Yu inconspicuously. After seeing his smile, she was relieved. She was still afraid that she would not be able to perform at her best due to her foot injury, and that Shen Yu would look down on her. After seeing Zhu Zhi's performance, Ji Shuyi, who was standing by, stood up and walked towards the stage. Now, among the 8 people, only she and Shen Yu had not performed. Shen Yu was the finale, so she was the only one left. She walked to the microphone with a guitar. The song I am singing today is Shen Yu's The Color of Youth. I hope you like it. As soon as she finished speaking, Wang Ming and others turned their eyes to Shen Yu and said with a teasing look, "Oh tilde. This O is very spiritual, it is rising and slightly curved. Anyone can hear the teasing in it. Yanzu, don't imitate it secretly, the first tone is flat, the second tone is rising, the third tone is curved and the fourth tone is falling. Soon." A song different from Shen Yu's version of The Color of Youth sounded in everyone's ears. Ji Shuyi's singing skills are naturally impeccable, and she is not much different from Shen Yu. Adding Shen Yu's high-quality song, the effect of 1 + 1 is far greater than 2. Everyone in the audience was intoxicated. After Ji Shuyi came down, he looked at Shen Yu and said embarrassedly, "I'm sorry, Shen Yu, I sang your song without your permission. I will make up for the copyright fee." Shen Yu smiled and shook his head. "No need to pay the fee. I haven't registered the copyright yet. After this episode, I will record the complete accompaniment first. Then find a professional recording studio to record the song and register the copyright. If you sing it again, you will have to pay the copyright fee." Ji Shuyi also said with a smile. "Okay, I'll take advantage of you." Shen Yu nodded, then stood up and walked onto the stage. Picked up the Pipa beside him, sat on the stool, and adjusted the microphone to a suitable position for himself. Wang Ming saw this and quickly reminded, "Old Shen, did you take the wrong instrument? The guitar is another one." Shen Yu glared at him unhappily and said, "Old Wang, I'm not old enough to have blurred vision yet, don't curse me." Wang Ming was not angry at being scolded, but smiled and said, "Hey, it seems that you can play the Pipa, I want to listen to it. Let's make a deal first, if it doesn't sound good, don't blame me for being blunt." Shen Yu ignored him and said to the camera, "I'm going to bring you a new original song called Window. This song is best accompanied by the guzheng, but as you all know, we're recording a program now, so we don't have that condition. Let's use the Pipa instead." After hearing that Shen Yu was going to sing a new song, Luo Zhi and others sat upright, looking at Shen Yu expectantly. The audience in the live broadcast room also put down their work. They focused on the screen. Many people who specialize in moving Shen Yu's videos have already started recording the screen early. After all, Shen Yu's products must be high quality. Shen Yu slowly stroked the Pipa with his right hand and gently plucked the Pipa strings. A moving and beautiful melody was heard by everyone. Hearing this melody, Luo Zhi's eyes lit up instantly. Among all the people present, no one has more say than her. Shen Yu's Pipa skills are very good. Although the accompaniment used in the song Shen Yu is singing now does not require too complicated fingering. But from Shen Yu's gestures, demeanor, etc., it can be seen that Shen Yu's Pipa skills are good. As we all know, Pipa is a recognized very difficult instrument in folk music, and it is usually a child's skill. Ordinary people usually need about 3 years to standardize it. Otherwise, they can't play some difficult songs at all. Accompanied by the moving melody of the Pipa, Shen Yu's voice with a strong sense of story came out faintly. "When the swallows leave, the branches are full of red beans. Traveler, don't ask when you will return. Who is alone guarding the clear water of Shexiang? I don't know what time it is tonight." The song, like a trickle of water, slowly flowed into everyone's ears. Hearing Shen Yu's song, Ji Shuyi's eyes lit up. It seems that Shen Yu sang another Chinese-style song this time. But it is not clear whether it is related to opera. "When the swallows return, the beloved has no trace. You should have a purpose, so we will leave. I don't want to have no place to send my love for you. Traveling far away, searching for you for thousands of miles." After hearing this, everyone who was originally smiling fell silent in an instant. A picture seemed to appear in front of their eyes. In the picture, a handsome scholar who looked even a little weak, wearing a washed but clean robe, carrying a bag and walking far away, embarking on the road to study. On his way, a woman was bidding farewell to her lover with tears in her eyes. The picture changed. When the swallows returned again, the scholar also came back. But the woman missed her lover too much. She didn't want her true feelings to be left without a place to rest. She traveled thousands of miles to find her lover, and the two missed each other. Hearing this, a sense of regret suddenly rose in everyone's heart. Fate is so bumpy that two beloved people finally missed each other. Luo Zhi stared at Shen Yu on the stage, wanting to engrave his appearance firmly in her bones. She made up her mind secretly that this time, she would not miss Shen Yu again. At this moment, Shen Yu's voice paused for a moment, and then continued to attack. Their voice also became vicissitudes of life. She sang, meeting an old friend in a foreign land. Every step and every word is about lovesickness. The people in the audience, the names are on the list of successful candidates. I never recognized them, but we were old acquaintances on the stage. He said, in the wedding night. Everyone congratulated, the beauty is matched with the talented man. I haven't heard it yet, every word and every sigh is full of love in the play. A picture appeared in everyone's eyes again. In the picture, the scholar has already won the first place in the imperial examination, and his name is on the list of successful candidates. A special troupe came to his mansion to perform. He didn't recognize that the person performing on the stage was his former lover. The audience in the audience congratulated him one after another. The scholar finally found a good woman, and when the talented man and the beautiful woman were matched, the woman on the stage sang her own story in a sad tone, and she even cried out when her love was strong. Everyone thought she was just into the play, but they didn't know she was actually singing about herself. After singing the song, Shen Yu slowly stood up, put the Pipa back to its original position, and returned to his seat. At this time, Luo Zhi and others were still immersed in Shen Yu's singing, and their eyes were red. Chapter 083. The first episode ended successfully after a long time. Everyone came back to their senses. Jinyue wiped the tears in front of her eyes, and there were still tears in her eyes. She looked at Shen Yu pitifully and said, "Shen Yu, how could you write such a sad song? You are really too bad." Seeing that everyone was going to eat him alive, Shen Yu smiled awkwardly, without any excuse, and dared not to. In the live broadcast room, many emotional viewers also had red eyes. Wow, it's too cruel. It's too cruel to that woman. That's right. That woman was on the stage, watching her sweetheart with another woman, accepting everyone's blessings. I really cried. It's really unpredictable. The two people who love each other are really not destined to be together. Shen Yu is a dog. The show is about to end, and you still have to do this. You have to pay for my tears. Although the story behind Shen Yu's song is a bit tragic. Two people in love missed each other and couldn't be together. But this is just a microcosm of that era. At that time, transportation, communication, etc. were not convenient. It often took several months for a letter to be sent. After many people left, they could never return to their hometowns. In such an era, the miss between the two is more like a fate of the times. Being able to arouse the emotions of so many viewers, Shen Yu's song was a great success and an absolutely great song. It was already very late at this point, and Mengder immediately said that he would end today's live broadcast. Seeing this, Shen Yu hurriedly asked, "Meng, will you still broadcast live tomorrow?" Mengder nodded and said, "Of course, live broadcast. You will go online tomorrow morning to say goodbye to the audience. In about half an hour, the first episode of our Heart-Beating Lovers program will be successfully concluded. You still have to catch the bus." Shen Yu and others looked at him like fools. Mengder was a little scared, and his hands were unconsciously clenched together. He asked with a guilty conscience, Why are you looking at me like that?" Shen Yu asked him unhappily, "The event we held tonight, what kind of party is it?" "A farewell party, I've decided on it, how could I not know about it?" "Then we've already held a farewell party, and we'll have to go online tomorrow morning to say goodbye to everyone." Hearing Shen Yu's words, Mengder was stunned for a moment. Then he suddenly woke up, scratched his head awkwardly, and said a little embarrassedly, "Yes, this is not our farewell party, there's no need to waste time tomorrow, you guys have a tight schedule tomorrow." As he said that, Mengder immediately said, "There will be no live broadcast tomorrow, and after the live broadcast tonight, the first episode of Heart-Beating Lovers will end perfectly." Then, Huang Ming and others said goodbye to the audience in front of the camera in turn. After a while, it was Shen Yu's turn. Shen Yu smiled at the camera and said, "A clear song and a full bottle of wine, we'll meet again in life, friends in front of the camera, see you next time." Then he stood up and waved goodbye to the audience in front of the camera. Seeing this, Huang Ming and others also stood up, smiled and waved. As the live broadcast room went black, the first episode of the Heart-Beating Lovers program officially ended. After the live broadcast, everyone sat back in their chairs again, but they were no longer as serious as before. Without the camera, everyone was much more casual. Wang Ming looked at Shen Yu and said, "Old Shen, what are your plans after the show? Do you want to go to Beijing with me for 2 days? I didn't perform well last time, so this time I'll let you see what a wild fishing king is." Shen Yu shook his head and said with a smile, "Let's make an appointment next time. I have to go back to Shanghai first. I have some things to deal with." Wang Ming was not disappointed, and nodded. "Then wait until I return to Shanghai, and we'll compete." "Okay." It was getting late. The stars in the sky were like bright pearls, scattered in the deep night sky. Thinking that they would have to travel tomorrow, Shen Yu raised the juice in his hand and said, "Let's drink juice instead of wine. After drinking this glass of juice, go back to the cabin to rest. We still have to travel tomorrow." Hearing this, Wang Ming and others also stood up, picked up their wine glasses on the table, clinked them, and drank them all. Then everyone went back to their heartbeat cabin. The news about the successful conclusion of the first episode of Heartbeat Lovers rushed to their hot search on Weibo at a lightning speed. And several other hot searches, occupying the top few places on the hot search list at the same time. The first episode of Heartbeating Lovers ended successfully. North Lion Tower of Babel, South Lion Plum Blossom Pile. Opera voice, a voice that can cleanse the soul. Shen Yu's new song. There is no standard for love, the standard is reserved for those you don't love. A clear song and a full bottle of wine, where in life do we not meet. The top 10 hot searches on Weibo. The Heartbeating Lovers program team occupied 6 of them, and they were the first 6. And immediately attracted the attention of many netizens. Some directors who originally wanted to use Weibo to promote their new works saw this horrible scene and immediately stopped looking at this, even if they spent money to buy hot searches. I am afraid there will not be such an unprecedented influence. Don't spend money and the effect is not achieved, it will be too miserable. So they avoided this time to avoid being used as cannon fodder. Modu. In the villa area. When Lin Feiwan saw that the first episode of the program was over and Shen Yu was about to come back, she jumped up from the bed with excitement. She couldn't wait to see Shen Yu. Now she still thought that as long as she admitted her mistake, Shen Yu would come back to her and remarry her. When she thought about the future, Shen Yu would create countless songs for her, she couldn't control the smile on her face. Little did she know that everything she thought about now was a daydream. From the day Shen Yu agreed to divorce her, the ending of the two was doomed. What was left was just her wishful thinking. Shen Yu had said more than once on the show that he would not reconcile with her, but she didn't want to believe it. She thought Shen Yu would satisfy her requirements to the maximum extent as before. Early in the morning of the next day, Shen Yu and others got up early, packed their luggage, and got on the car arranged by the program team. Without telling anyone, they quietly left Inu village. After crossing mountains and ridges again, finally arrived at Tianfu Airport in Sichuan province. Luo Zhi looked at Shen Yu beside her and asked softly, "Ayu, do I want to go to the Magic City with you? I want to go around the Magic City and visit Teacher Liu by the way." Chapter 084 Return to Magic City. Shen Yu nodded and said with a smile, "Of course, I have no objection. We can also visit our alma mater when the time comes." When Luo Zhi heard this, a flower-like smile suddenly appeared on her face. She nodded and sat next to Shen Yu, as obedient as a little wife. After a while, the flight to Beijing had already started checking tickets. Wang Ming and others immediately stood up and said goodbye to Shen Yu and others. Before Ji Shuyi left, she also urged Shen Yu to register the copyright of the song and record and release it as soon as possible. She was still waiting to sing it at the concert. Shen Yu nodded and agreed with a smile. Said that she would get it done in the next few days and ensure that it would not affect her plans for the concert. After seeing off Wang Ming and others, only Shen Yu, Luo Zhi, Su Jinyue, and Zhu Ji were left. All 4 of them were going to Magic City. After waiting for a while again, the flight to Shanghai also started to check tickets, and everyone started to board the plane with their suitcases. When they returned to Shanghai, it was already 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Shen Yu saw that it was getting late, and his stomach was protesting, so he suggested, "Do you want to have dinner together before going home?" Everyone was a little hungry at this time, so they didn't refuse. Zhu Ji suddenly said at this time, I know there is a local restaurant nearby, which tastes very good and is very private. Do you want to go? Shen Yu and the other two had no other ideas. After hearing Zhu Ji's recommendation, they immediately agreed. Then they booked a large online car-hailing service online. 4 people plus for suitcases, the sedan on one side really couldn't accommodate them. Soon, a luxurious nanny car stopped in front of Shen Yu and others. After helping to put the luggage of several women in the trunk, Shen Yu sat in the co-pilot. The driver was a man who looked to be in his 40s. He looked very charming with a full beard, and he must be a refined man. As soon as he opened his mouth, a strong smell of northeastern corn slag immediately hit him. Shen Yu knew who the man was from without asking. It must be said that people from the northeast who have an amazing talent for socializing. They don't know what social death is. They all have that kind of social awesomeness, and this big brother is no exception. As soon as Shen Yu came up, the big brother saw Shen Yu's appearance clearly and started talking. Oh my, brother, you are so handsome. I have been working for Didi for so many years, and I have never seen a passenger as handsome as you. To be honest, your appearance is definitely one of the best in Shanghai. Shen Yu fastened his seatbelt and said with a smile. A little handsome, not worth mentioning, big brother, you are from the northeast. The big brother started the car and replied with a smile. Yeah, just this accent, absolutely a pure northeastern person. Then the two began to chat casually. Luo Zhi and the other 3 behind were shocked. These 2 people just met, and they are chatting so enthusiastically, are they serious? At the end of the conversation, the elder brother even offered to introduce his niece to Shen Yu. If this private restaurant was not far away, the two would probably have sworn brotherhood on the spot. When Shen Yu and others got off the car, the elder brother still looked unsatisfied, and it was obvious that he had a lot to say. Luo Zhi looked at Shen Yu and smiled, how can you chat so well? The elder brother is about to introduce his niece to you. Shen Yu spread his hands with an innocent look and said with a smile, it has nothing to do with me. The elder brother is too enthusiastic. Luo Zhi rolled his eyes at him, then pulled the suitcase and followed Zhu Ji's pace. Led by Zhu Ji, the 4 came to a very retro 2-story villa. Zhu Ji pressed the doorbell very familiarly. Soon a young lady in uniform opened the door. After checking Zhu Ji's qualifications, she opened the door to welcome them. Seeing Shen Yu's puzzled look, Zhu Ji smiled and explained, this place has a membership system and only welcomes members. If you are not accompanied by a member, you cannot enter. This guarantees the privacy of customers to the greatest extent. Shen Yu nodded and said, it is indeed very private. What you celebrities are most afraid of is paparazzi. You can basically eat here without worry. Jinyue, who was standing aside, was a little unhappy when she heard this. What do you mean by you celebrities? Aren't you one? I'm not. I'm an idler. Didn't I say that before? Jinyue rolled her eyes and shook the phone in her hand and said, brother, you don't even browse the internet. You are famous, very famous, and you are already the top star in the entertainment industry. Now your news is everywhere on Weibo. Shen Yu scratched his hair awkwardly and said embarrassedly. Well, I don't pay much attention to these entertainment news, and I haven't downloaded this Weibo. Zhu Ji on the side was a little shocked. You haven't downloaded Weibo? Shen Yu nodded. I feel that Weibo is too utilitarian. As long as you pay money, you can turn black into white. There is no fairness at all, so I didn't register. Zhu Ji was stunned when he heard this. Looked at Shen Yu, wanted to say something, but in the end said nothing. Weibo is now a big company. It is the real leader of domestic social platforms. Nearly half of the people in the country are using Weibo. It is unrivaled in China and is a unique existence. It is basically a monopoly. Just because it has no rivals. It means that whether it is promoting new songs, new movies, or playing on the internet to take advertisements, or even planting grass. If you want to quickly get a lot of traffic, you can only use the Weibo platform. At the same time, if a celebrity is exposed to a scandal, it can also spend a huge price to get Weibo to remove the hot search. Not only the general public, but even many celebrities are very resistant to Weibo's operation. But there is no way they can't leave Weibo. They can only curse quietly in secret while using it. So what Shen Yu said is not wrong. Under the guidance of the staff, the 4 of them came to a small private room. As soon as Zhu Ji sat down, he introduced to everyone, everyone must try the 8 treasure duck here. This is the specialty of this restaurant. There are not many people in the whole Magic City who can make this level. Su Jinyu smiled and said, then you must have won. I haven't eaten authentic 8 treasure duck for many years. I always feel that the taste is not good enough. Then, under Zhu Ji's recommendation, everyone ordered for happiness roasted gluten, crystal shrimp, sweet and sour spare ribs, pickled juxian, Shanghai braised pork and other dishes. While the dishes were being served, several people started chatting. Su Jinyu looked at Luo Zhi and asked considerately. Luo Zhi, you haven't booked a hotel yet, right? How about you stay at my house tonight? No need to bother you. Thank you, Jinyue. Shen Yu and I have agreed to stay at his house today. Chapter 085 The Cunning Su Jinyu. As soon as Luo Zhi said this, not only Zhu Ji and Su Jinyu were stunned. Even Shen Yu was stunned and looked at Luo Zhi blankly. The three of them really didn't expect that Luo Zhi would say such shocking words. Shen Yu was even more puzzled. Luo Zhi had never told him before that she would stay at his house. She just said that they would go to visit the teacher together. After a while, the three of them reacted. Su Jinyu looked at Luo Zhi and said anxiously, this is not appropriate, Luo Zhi. It's not convenient for you two to live together. It's not good to tell others. Luo Zhi seemed not to understand what Su Jinyu meant. She smiled softly. It's okay. Shen Yu and I have a good relationship. We don't mind. Besides, we have to visit the teacher together tomorrow. Zhu Ji and Su Jinyue's faces drooped instantly when they heard this, looking at Luo Zhi with resentment. How could they not know what Luo Zhi was thinking? It's nothing more than that the one who is close to the water gets the moon first. If she stayed at Shen Yu's house, she would be a big step ahead of them. Seeing that Luo Zhi didn't accept the challenge at all, Zhu Ji and Su Jinyu cursed Luo Zhi in their hearts for playing too dirty. They were old classmates, and Luo Zhi had been secretly in love with her for 3 years. If they continued to play like this, they would have no chance. However, they had no other way to deal with it. They couldn't force Luo Zhi to go. Just then, the staff of the private restaurant knocked on the door, walked in and started serving the dishes. Because it was a member restaurant, there were not many customers in this restaurant, and the dishes were served quickly. In just 20 minutes, all the meals for Shen Yu and others were served. Seeing this, everyone had to stop and solve the problem of food and clothing first. Zhu Ji looked at everyone and asked with a smile, would you like some red wine? I have stored a few bottles of good red wine here. Shen Yu thought about it for a while, but still shook his head and said, let's not drink today. Everyone is very tired after a day of running around. Let's go home and rest early. Hearing Shen Yu's words, the three women also felt that it made sense. So they didn't say anything more and concentrated on eating the dishes on the table. It must be said that the private dishes recommended by Zhu Ji are really delicious. Especially the signature dish here, 8 treasure duck. The duck is plump and full, and the original juice is outstanding. The skin of the 8 treasure duck shines under the light, showing a golden luster, as if wrapped in a layer of golden silk. And the moment the duck's belly is cut open, the aroma of meat, rice and sauce mix together, lingering in the air for 3 days, and never stops. The ingredients inside are also very rich. Shen Yu took a bite and his eyes lit up immediately. The duck meat is tender and soft, and the 8 treasure duck is fragrant and glutinous. No effort is needed, just a light sip, and the fragrance has melted in the mouth for a long time. Shen Yu hasn't eaten such authentic 8 treasure duck outside for a long time. After dinner, Zhu Ji and Shen Yu and others split up. Su Jinyu and Shen Yu are from the same community, so they naturally go back together. And Luo Zhi can only take a taxi home alone. After returning to their community, Su Jinyu still looked at Luo Zhi with reluctance. Luo Zhi, why don't you stay with me tonight? My house is more spacious. Luo Zhi smiled and shook her head. Seeing this, Su Jinyu pulled the suitcase and walked towards her home reluctantly. From time to time, she looked back at the two of them, her eyes full of loss. Shen Yu took Luo Zhi back to his own nest. The room had not been occupied for a week, and there was a thin layer of dust everywhere. Shen Yu asked Luo Zhi to sit down first. Then he picked up the tools and started cleaning. Luo Zhi was about to get up to help, but the phone in her bag on the table suddenly rang. Seeing this, Luo Zhi had to answer the phone first. After listening to a few words, her face was like a magic trick. The expression on her face, which was originally excited, drooped instantly. She looked at Shen Yu, who was cleaning, and said, "Ayu, Jinyue said that there was no one at home, and she couldn't go home. She wanted to stay here tonight." Shen Yu scratched his head and said helplessly, "But, I only have 2 rooms at home, no extra rooms." Jinyue said hurriedly on the phone, "Luo Zhi, how about I share a room with you tonight? Take me in. I really have nowhere to go tonight." Hearing this, Luo Zhi couldn't help but sigh. She looked at Shen Yu and said, "How about letting Jinyue share a room with me tonight?" Since Luo Zhi said so, Shen Yu naturally had no objection and continued to clean. After that, Luo Zhi told Jinyue Shen Yu's house number and hung up the phone and started to help wipe the table. After a while, Jinyue, dragging a huge suitcase, walked in with a smile on her face. On the way home just now, she had been thinking about how to ruin Luo Zhi's plan. She racked her brains and emptied her stomach. Unexpectedly, she really thought of it, and there was the scene on the phone just now. It's not that no one is home, but that she didn't go home at all. After walking in, Jinyue suppressed the smile on her face and said shyly, "I'm sorry, my parents are traveling, I can't get in without the key, so I came to sponsor one night." Shen Yu looked at the password lock on his door and fell into deep thought. This community is a new real estate project. All the houses are well decorated and ready to move in. When Shen Yu wanted to buy a house, this community had just been launched not long ago. He and Lin Feiwan thought the location, environment, and supporting facilities of this house were all good, so they decided on it. And the door locks of this community were all purchased by the developer before the launch. And it is also a big brand. So many residents did not change them after moving in, but changed the password and continued to use them. Shen Yu looked at Jinyue, and finally couldn't help pointing at the password lock on the door. "Password lock, what key do you want?" Jinyue's face turned red as a red buttock's, but she still said stubbornly, "The password lock has no power, and the key is in the house in Pudong. I will go there tomorrow and get the key." Shen Yu didn't say anything more after hearing this. After Jinyue saw that the two were cleaning, she joined in without saying a word. The room was not big, with 2 bedrooms and a living room, barely 100 square meters. With the efforts of the 3 people, it was spotless in less than half an hour. Shen Yu took out a brand new set of 4-piece bedding from the cabinet and helped Luo Zhi and Jinyue change into them. Chapter 086, A pair of giant pandas. Shen Yu looked at Luo Zhi and Jinyue and said, "We are all tired today. Let's wash up and rest early. You should have brought pajamas. If not, I have brand new ones here." Luo Zhi and Jinyue nodded repeatedly. They naturally brought pajamas with them. After that, after the 3 of them washed up, they returned to their respective rooms. Luo Zhi leaned on the bedside table and looked at Jinyue beside her. A deep resentment flashed in her eyes. She was not a fool. She naturally understood why Jinyue came to Shen Yu's house so eagerly. Isn't it because she was afraid that she would get there first? As for what she said just now about her family going out for a trip, I'm afraid it was all a lie. She finally couldn't hold back and took the initiative to open the conversation. "Jinyue, I know what you're thinking. You're just afraid that Shen Yu and I will fall in love after spending too much time together. But you know, we've known each other for 3 years, and my love for him has not diminished in the past 3 years. Instead, it has deepened with the passage of time. Shen Yu also has feelings for me. Let me put it this way, Shen Yu is a little dull in terms of feelings. If I had been brave enough to take a step forward, I would be the one marrying Shen Yu now, and there would be no divorce." Although Jinyue was lying on the bed playing with her phone, her mind was not on the phone at all. After hearing Luo Zhi's words, she felt very uncomfortable. She knew that Luo Zhi's words were from her heart. And they were real, but she was a little unwilling. There's really no way to give in to feelings. Although she felt sorry for what happened to the 2 of them, it wasn't a reason for her to give up. Everyone has the right to pursue love. She has been in the entertainment industry for so long, and has seen thousands of men of all kinds. There are many handsome, talented, and powerful men among them, but she is not interested at all. She finally met someone she likes, so she naturally doesn't want to miss it. She put down her phone, turned her head to look into Luo Zhi's eyes, and said without flinching, "Luo Zhi, I know you regret what happened 3 years ago, but I can't quit. Let's compete fairly. Shen Yu is such a good man, anyone would be tempted. Although you are very dramatic, I am not bad either. Fair competition, then why don't you go home and come to live in the same bedroom with me? If I don't come, can you guarantee that you will behave yourself tonight?" The two of them were on the line for a long time, and no one could suppress the other, and finally they were evenly matched. Finally, I couldn't resist the sleepiness and fell asleep. Early in the morning of the next day, Shen Yu's biological clock successfully woke him up. He opened his eyes, stretched his waist. He got up and put on his clothes. After washing up, he went downstairs to start today's morning run. After getting used to the green mountains and waters of Inu village and the cool breeze in the morning, it was a little uncomfortable to run in the green belt of Magic City. After exercising for an hour, Shen Yu bought some breakfast and vegetables and fruits, and returned to the room. After seeing that Luo Zhi and Jinyue did not get up, Shen Yu put breakfast on the table. Then went to the bathroom, washed off the sweat on his body, changed into loose clothes, and then knocked on the door of the two people. "Luo Zhi, Jinyue, you two get up and wash up. Breakfast has been bought." After a while, the room slowly opened. Luo Zhi and Jinyue came out in pajamas, rubbing their hazy eyes. They had a 1v1 battle last night, which was too late. They didn't get enough sleep and looked listless. Shen Yu couldn't help but smile when he saw the dark circles under their eyes. "Did you two steal the cow yesterday?" Jinyue rolled her eyes at him and walked into the bathroom. Luo Zhi smiled and explained, "I didn't pay attention to the time when I was chatting with Jinyue last night, so I slept a little late." Seeing Luo Zhi's sleepy look, Shen Yu said unhappily, "Don't visit Teacher Liu today. You will definitely be scolded in this state. Go tomorrow and adjust yourself today." Luo Zhi thought about it, and then nodded. It is indeed not appropriate to meet the mentor in the current state. It is not possible to be so listless when meeting after not seeing each other for a long time. It seems very disrespectful. After Jinyue came out, Luo Zhi hurried into the bathroom to wash up. Shen Yu brought Jinyue to the dining table and said with a smile, "I bought some steamed buns, pot stickers, wontons and soy milk. Eat a little. I bought vegetables to cook for you at noon." Jinyue looked at the steamed buns on the table and asked with a smile, "Is this steamed bun from the Shirley steamed bun near our community?" Shen Yu raised his eyebrows when he heard it. Said in surprise, "Which steamed bun do you like to eat?" Jinyue said with a smile, "I have eaten that steamed bun since I was a child. I lived nearby when I was a child. My community is a bit old, so when this community was built, I bought a set of the house brought my parents over." Shen Yu nodded when he heard it. "This pan-fried bun tastes really good, I like it too." After a while, Luo Zhi came out after washing up. Jinyue couldn't hold back any longer, picked up a pan-fried bun and stuffed it into her mouth. Her eyes narrowed as she ate. Shen Yu picked up one for Luo Zhi first. "This pan-fried bun is very good, much better than the ones near our school at that time. You should try it." Luo Zhi immediately showed a beautiful smile like a blooming flower, slowly picked up the chopsticks, picked up the pan-fried bun on the plate, and ate it in small bites. The moment she took the bite, Luo Zhi's eyes lit up. Shen Yu was right. It was indeed much better than the pan-fried buns she had eaten in college. The bottom was crispy and golden, and the filling was tender and juicy. When you bite it, the gravy overflows, and the taste is extremely delicious, which makes people have endless aftertaste. After breakfast, she helped to clean up the table. When she learned that Shen Yu had nothing to do this morning, Jinyue yawned and got up and went back to the room to take a nap. Luo Zhi sat on the sofa and chatted with Shen Yu. Although she was very sleepy, she cherished the time she spent with Shen Yu more. Besides, she had some little thoughts of her own. The two chatted about the interesting things that happened in college. And soon there were bursts of laughter. After about half an hour, the door suddenly made a sound of unlocking, which immediately attracted the attention of Shen Yu and Luo Zhi. Chapter 087. 3 Women Competing. The next second, a beautiful woman wearing a creamy white halter dress with pearls and a pair of 8 centimeters high heels of the same color opened the door and walked in slowly. It was Lin Feiwan. She put her bag on the shelf at the door and turned around with a smile on her face. seeing Shen Yu and Luo Zhi staring at her. Especially Luo Zhi, who was still wearing pajamas. The smile on her face suddenly stopped. She looked at Luo Zhi with anger and asked loudly, "Why did you show up at my house? What did you two do last night?" Luo Zhi was subconsciously a little panicked in her mind. But she quickly reacted. Lin Feiwan had divorced Shen Yu. She no longer needed to worry about Lin Feiwan. So she chuckled. And her tense body relaxed again. She felt even more grateful to Mengde. In fact, she had not planned to stay at Shen Yu's house when she came to Shanghai. She was still very reserved and felt that it was inappropriate for a man and a woman to live in the same room. But when Mengde left, he sent a message to warn her. Although Shen Yu has not entered the entertainment industry yet, but he has become very popular in the entertainment industry, and it is only a matter of time before he enters the entertainment industry in the future. Lin Feiwan will definitely not give up Shen Yu, this sweet potato. As long as Shen Yu returns to Shanghai, she will come back and use sweet words to make Shen Yu remarry her. If she doesn't want to lose this time, she will live in Shen Yu's house. Sure enough, Mengde's prediction was too accurate. Lin Feiwan took the initiative to come to Shen Yu's house when Shen Yu just came back. She also brought breakfast in her hand. If she doesn't want to get back together, it's not her character. Luo Zhi looked at Lin Feiwan and said with a smile, "I stayed at Shen Yu's place last night. Is there any problem?" "Of course there is a problem. You are a single woman, but you went to a married man's house to stay. Do you think it's appropriate? Shen Yu is divorced, and we are good friends." "What do you mean by divorce?" "Shen Yu and I just have some minor conflicts. We are going to remarry soon. Luo Zhi, I advise you not to have any other small thoughts." The two of them went back and forth, arguing fiercely. Each of them wanted to overwhelm the other in momentum, staring at each other without showing any weakness. Shen Yu saw this and had to force the two to separate. Then he looked at Lin Feiwan and said helplessly, "Why are you here?" Lin Feiwan's face froze when he heard this, and then he said with a look of grievance, "Why am I here? This is my home, of course I can come." Shen Yu looked at Lin Feiwan, and a trace of sadness suddenly surged in his heart. He thought he had let it go. But he didn't expect that when Lin Feiwan stood in front of him again, his heart couldn't calm down for a long time. He sighed and said, "You should not have forgotten that we are divorced, and it was you and your family who proposed it." Lin Feiwan's face changed when he heard this. I don't actually want to divorce you, it's just my agent and..." Just as Lin Feiwan was explaining, the door of the second bedroom opened directly. Jinyue walked out from inside and asked in confusion, "Why are you so loud, is there a guest?" After seeing Jinyue, Lin Feiwan was petrified. She stared at Jinyue blankly, and then looked at Luo Zhi. Only then did she realize that she had misunderstood just now. Nothing happened between Luo Zhi and Shen Yu last night. And the whole person suddenly felt relieved. Jinyue looked at the woman in front of her and was a little confused. She stretched out her soft hand and rubbed her eyes. After she found that she was not mistaken, she asked softly, "Lin Feiwan, why are you here?" Lin Feiwan looked at Jinyue and snorted coldly, "This is my home, why can't I be here?" "Your home, isn't this Shen Yu's home?" Shen Yu saw this and hurriedly explained to Jinyue, "Jinyue, didn't I say on the show that I was divorced? This is my ex-wife." Jinyue covered her mouth in surprise when she heard this. She never thought that Shen Yu's ex-wife was Lin Feiwan. It was really surprising. However, seeing Lin Feiwan coming to the door aggressively early in the morning and declaring her sovereignty, Jinyue was immediately dissatisfied. "You are a divorced person, but you still want to go back. You are really shameless." After looking Lin Feiwan up and down, he smiled and teased, "Oh tilde. It's the same old formula, brothers. It's the ex-wife's sister. You came to see our Shen Yu so early in the morning. Is there something wrong?" Lin Feiwan sneered and said, "You Shen Yu, you are really arrogant. There is only a small conflict between you and me. You people should stop dreaming." Jinyue was naturally not afraid of arguing with Lin Feiwan. Although Lin Feiwan's career is on the rise and she is a popular little queen. But compared to herself, she is still a little behind. She just had the hope of becoming a movie queen, while she was the real movie queen, so she mocked him mercilessly, "Lin Feiwan, now the heartthrob is so popular, I don't believe you haven't seen it." Our Shen Yu has said that you two will not get back together, because your mirror is already broken. You don't understand the truth, right? Otherwise, let me explain it to you. Lin Feiwan stamped her feet anxiously, hysterically. You know what? Ayu and I just have some conflicts. We can just talk it out. It's because Shen Yu is famous now that the conflicts are resolved, right? If Shen Yu wasn't so famous now, I'm afraid you wouldn't come today. Lin Feiwan paused when he heard it, as if his thoughts were hit. He looked a little evasive, but still said stubbornly. You're talking nonsense. It's not like that at all. Shen Yu sighed when he saw Lin Feiwan like this. They lived together for 3 years. Although they were apart for more than a year. He still remembered some of Lin Feiwan's habits very clearly. Her appearance just now was obviously the kind of shame after being exposed for lying. He had seen it countless times before. Seeing that Jinyue was still eager to try and wanted to take advantage of the victory. Shen Yu raised his hand to stop her. Then he looked at the woman who was so familiar to him, and said softly, Lin Feiwan, for some reason, we have divorced. You should try not to come here in the future to avoid misunderstandings. Chapter 088, Eliminate Telecom Fraud. Hearing Shen Yu's words, Lin Feiwan felt as if she had been wronged. She stared at Shen Yu pitifully and said, Ayu, I know you are still angry with me, so I don't blame you. I'll give you time to calm down. I'll come to see you again in a few days. After saying that, she turned around, picked up her bag from the shelf, opened the door and walked out. As soon as Lin Feiwan walked out, Jinyue was like a deflated balloon. She collapsed on the sofa and kept patting her chest, her mouth opened exaggeratedly, and she gasped for air. Shen Yu found it funny when he saw this. You were so majestic just now, why did you become so depressed when they left? Jinyue rolled her eyes at Shen Yu and said, This is my first time doing this job, I feel guilty, don't you see who did the good thing? Shen Yu touched his nose awkwardly and didn't feel like saying anything more. Who would have thought that? He had made it very clear to Lin Feiwan, and they were divorced. Lin Feiwan would still do this. Feeling a little sorry, she said, How about this, I'll cook you a big meal at noon today. Hearing the big meal, Jinyue's eyes lit up immediately. Shen Yu's cooking skills are really amazing. You can never forget the taste once you eat it, as if you are addicted. Although she was looking forward to it, she still pretended to be reluctant. Then I'll give you a favor this time. After Lin Feiwan's disturbance, Luo Zhi and Jinyue were both sleepless and sat on the sofa to chat. Although they didn't give in to each other last night. But in front of Shen Yu, they were very tactful and didn't confront each other. Instead, they got along very harmoniously. And Shen Yu directly changed the password of the password lock and deleted Lin Feiwan's fingerprint to ensure that she would not enter his house again. Since they were divorced, they should not have any contact with each other, so as not to make everyone look bad. After doing all this, Shen Yu also sat on the sofa and joined the chat. After a while, Shen Yu's mobile phone suddenly rang. He picked it up and found that it was an unfamiliar number. He hung up without saying a word. Telecom frauds are emerging in an endless stream these days. If you want to completely eliminate telecom frauds, refusing to answer strange calls is a good choice. However, you may miss many calls because of this. But Shen Yu doesn't care about these at all. After a few minutes, the call came again. Shen Yu hung up again. Luo Zhi and Jinyue also looked over curiously. Shen Yu smiled and explained. An unknown phone number may be a telecom fraud. Luo Zhi heard it. What if it's not a fraud call, but your friend? Shen Yu curled his lips and didn't take it seriously. How can a friend not have contact information? Before he finished speaking, the phone rang again. This time it was Mengda's call. Shen Yu answered it immediately. Before he had time to speak, Mengda's urgent voice came from the microphone. Shen Yu, did someone call you just now? I called you, but you didn't answer. Hey, how do you know? Is it your new phone number? Mengda hurriedly explained. It's not mine. The leader of the radio and television bureau asked me for your phone number just now. After you refused the call came back to me. If it calls again, don't refuse it. Shen Yu frowned and said. I don't know any radio and television bureau leader. What does he want to talk to me about? Brother, just think of it as doing me a favor. That's my leader's leader. I didn't dare to ask him if he didn't say it. Just don't hang up on him later. Hearing what Mengder said, Shen Yu thought about it and agreed. I can't let Mengder offend the leader. After hanging up the phone, Jinyue asked in surprise. Shen Yu, what does the leader of the radio and television want to see you about? Shen Yu also looked confused, spread his hands and said. I don't know what the leader of the radio and television wants to see me about, and Mengder didn't ask. You should be more serious later, the radio and television is in charge of the entertainment industry. Shen Yu nodded, but he didn't care at all in his heart. He is not in the entertainment industry. Naturally, he doesn't need to care about what the radio and television thinks. Just then, Shen Yu's phone rang again. It was still the same mobile phone number as before. Shen Yu didn't hang up, but answered the call directly. As soon as the call was connected, a clear voice came from the other end of the phone, as sweet as a lark. Hello, is this Mr. Shen Yu? Hearing this voice, Shen Yu was stunned for a moment. Didn't Mengder just say that he was the leader of the radio and television bureau? Listening to this voice, it was obviously a woman in her 20s. Are all the leaders of the radio and television bureau so young? Hello, I'm Shen Yu, are you from the radio and television bureau? Shen Yu didn't continue, but the woman on the other side was also very kind and naturally she could hear what Shen Yu meant and said with a smile. I'm sorry, Shen Yu, I haven't had time to introduce myself yet. I asked the elders at the radio and television bureau to get your contact information. My name is Fong Ruoshi, and my grandfather is Fong Bingwen. Hearing Fong Ruoshi's self-introduction, Shen Yu knew the ins and outs of the matter. As for Fong Ruoshi's grandfather, Mr. Fong Bingwen, he was also very familiar with him. She is one of the top writers in China today. She has made great achievements in prose, poetry, novels and other fields. Shen Yu had also read the old man's works. She is indeed worthy of his reputation. Shen Yu was polite and smiled. You are Mr. Feng's granddaughter. What do you want to talk to me about? It's like this. My grandfather has read your works and wants to communicate with you. Is it convenient for you now? Shen Yu was startled when he heard it, and then smiled and said. Of course it's convenient. As soon as their voice fell, their voice on the other end of the phone became a hearty voice. Hello, Mr. Shen, I am Fong Bingwen. Hello, Mr. Fong. Shen Xiaoyu, I recently read your Peach Blossom Cottage song. Every time I read it, I have different feelings, especially the line, others laugh at me for being too crazy, I laugh at others for not seeing through me. It is really wonderful. I didn't expect that there are still talented young people like you in this era. It is really the Yangtze River behind the waves pushing the old waves. Mr. Fong, you are too kind. I have read your essays and poems. You are the pillar of the literary world in our country today. Being praised by the younger generation he favored. Fong Bingwen's face was full of smiles. Because of the hands-free, Fong Ruoshi on the side could also hear what Shen Yu said. Seeing her grandfather smiling with wrinkles on his face, she was immediately disgusted. She clearly said before that she hated people who flattered her the most. As a result, now she has lost herself in Shen Yu's flattery, which made her a little bit unbearable to look at. Chapter 089 Recording Songs. Afterwards, Shen Yu and Mr. Fong, two friends of different ages, began chatting freely through their microphone. Literature, poetry. Fong Bingwen wanted to study Shen Yu, so he took the initiative to test him, and Shen Yu had a complete world in his mind. And after coming to this world, he still did not give up reading. The amount of knowledge he had was simply bottomless. No matter what topic he talked about, he could not be stumped, and he could also give his own understanding. Fong Bingwen was testing him at first, but in the end it gradually became dominated by Shen Yu. And he himself was like a student, constantly asking about some knowledge he did not understand, and Shen Yu gave the answer very easily. Afterwards, Fong Bingwen led the topic to Shen Yu's creation. From the Peach Blossom Cottage song, to Shen Yu's Thin Gold style. Finally, he talked about the half-sentence of poetry Shen Yu wrote last night. At this point, Fong Bingwen asked with a smile. My dear Shen, your poem should be complete, why not let me appreciate it? Shen Yu chuckled and said. Since Mr. Fong has a refined taste, I am naturally happy to do it, but the first two sentences of this poem are not outstanding, Mr. Fong, please don't mind. After that, Shen Yu read out the poem of Yang Shu with a slight modification. In the Yu Garden by the Huangpu River, we met here more than 3 years ago. A clear song and a full bottle of wine, what is life, we will never meet again. Fong Bingwen held the phone in one hand, closed his eyes and shook his head slightly, savoring Shen Yu's poem carefully. After a while, he spoke with some surprise, "What a good poem, it is an excellent and light work." The last sentence, "we will never meet again," is definitely a famous sentence handed down from generation to generation. Mr. Shen, does this poem have a name? Let's call it Yuan. The old and the young chatted for a full hour. Finally, Fong Bingwen hung up the phone at Fong Ruosh's urging. If he hadn't had something to do today, he might have chatted with Shen Yu all day. Before hanging up the phone, Fong Bingwen also warmly invited Shen Yu to visit Beijing, and the two had a long talk in person. Shen Yu said that if he went to Beijing in the future, he would definitely come to bother him. After hanging up the phone, Shen Yu saw 2 pairs of bright eyes staring at him intently, and was immediately startled. "What are you two doing?" Luo Zhi looked at Shen Yu in surprise and said, "You just chatted with Mr. Fong Bingwen, who wrote Chunshan collection, for an hour." Shen Yu nodded mechanically. "Yes, what's the problem? Don't you know his status?" "I know, he is a great writer in our country and one of the top figures in Beijing literature. Mr. Fong is also one of the most prestigious people in the literary world today." Shen Yu chatted with him calmly, just like chatting with an ordinary friend, which touched the two of them. Jinyue silently gave a thumbs up. Luo Zhi couldn't suppress the smile on her face. Since she fell in love with Shen Yu, she knew that Shen Yu was just low-key on weekdays, but actually very talented. But Shen Yu's excellence was still far beyond her imagination. After Lin Feiwan's uninvited visit and Fong Lao's phone call, it was already 10:30. Shen Yu got up and walked towards the kitchen to prepare the luxurious lunch. Luo Zhi and Jinyue also got up to help. Shen Yu did not refuse. He assigned them some tasks of washing and cutting vegetables, and then started his own cooking show. Soon, a table of extremely rich local dishes was freshly baked. The mixed aroma of various dishes made Luo Zhi and Jinyue swallow their saliva unconsciously. After serving the 2 people rice, the 3 of them sat around the dining table and began to eat heartily. After Jinyue took their first bite, she couldn't stop eating and shoveled food into her mouth frantically. However, unlike Jinyue, Luo Zhi's movements were very elegant. If you just look at her eating style, no one would have thought that she ate as much as Luo Zhi, who was wolfing down the food on the opposite side. After finishing the meal, the 3 of them didn't rush to clean up the battlefield. They sat on the chairs and started chatting. Jinyue looked at Shen Yu and said, "Shen Yu, are there any activities this afternoon? Do you want to stay in the room?" Shen Yu didn't hesitate at all and blurted out, "I plan to go to the recording studio in the afternoon to record the songs I sang in the program group." Jinyue's eyes lit up when she heard this, and she said excitedly, "I'll go with you." Shen Yu shook his head quickly. "No need, you go to your other house to get the key, Luo Zhi and I will go." Luo Zhi, who was standing by, smiled when she heard this. She was just thinking about how to cleverly let Jinyue return to her home. But she didn't expect Shen Yu to do it directly. The smile on Jinyue's face disappeared immediately, and her whole face drooped instantly. But Shen Yu seemed not to notice it. "You can't let her stay at home all the time. It will be so embarrassing if it gets out. How can you still live like a human being?" After resting for a while, Shen Yu got up and planned to wash the dishes, but was stopped by Luo Zhi. Luo Zhi smiled and said, "I can't let you cook and wash the dishes at the same time. Let me do it. You book a recording studio." Seeing this, Shen Yu did not refuse. Immediately took out his mobile phone and started to book a recording studio. But soon, Shen Yu frowned. He was full of doubts. Why are there so many people recording songs recently? He found several recording studios in succession, but they were all fully booked. There was no free studio today. Seeing Shen Yu's worried face, Jinyue asked with concern, "What's wrong, Shen Yu? Today's recording studio is fully booked, so we can only do it another day." Jinyue frowned slightly when she heard this. She didn't have any connections in this area, after all, she was not in the music industry. But she soon thought of a solution and said with a smile, "Let me help you solve it." Jinyue took out her mobile phone and made a call. After the phone rang twice, it was connected. Without waiting for the other party to speak, Jinyue went straight to the point. Shuyi, this is Jinyue. Do you have a familiar recording studio in Magic City? Shenu wants to record a song this afternoon, but he can't find a studio at all. After hearing this, Shuyi on the other end of the phone immediately asked them to wait for a while. 5 minutes later, Shuyi called directly. Jinyue, Xingluo Recording Studio, when you ask Shen Yu to go there, just go find their boss and tell him that I introduced him. They will reserve a room for Shen Yu to use today. Shuyi, thank you on behalf of Shen Yu. We will leave soon. Let's talk next time. I'm hanging up first. After saying that, he hung up the phone directly. Chapter 090. It is important for people to know themselves. Shuyi, who was far away in Beijing, just wanted to ask Jinyue why Shen Yu and she were together. But she heard a beep from her phone and sighed deeply. It was really so far away from home that she couldn't intervene at all. At this time, Jinyue looked at Shen Yu with a playful look on her face. Shen Yu, you just heard it, Xingluo Recording Studio just mentioned Shuyi's name. Shen Yu smiled and said, "You are still smart, why didn't I think of asking Shuyi? Thank you Jinyue. You're welcome, just take me with you when you record the song this afternoon." That won't work. Jinyue stood up instantly after hearing the words, glared at Shen Yu angrily, and said coquettishly, "You're crossing the river and destroying the bridge, I will never help you again, bad man, hum." She sat on the sofa angrily. Luo Zhi came out of the kitchen and saw Jinyue with a shriveled face sit on the sofa. Her mouth was pouting so much that an oil bottle could be hung on it. Curiously asked, "What's wrong?" Jinyue was like dynamite, exploding at a touch. Seeing Luo Zhi, she was even more angry. "You are not a good person either, hum." Shen Yu had to explain. "I don't let her go to the recording studio, that's it. In fact, it's not that I don't let her go, she's going to get the key today." Luo Zhi chuckled when she heard it. Shen Yu is simply a wooden man. Jinyue was not angry because he didn't let her go to the recording studio, but because he didn't let her continue to live at home. But Luo Zhi would not take the initiative to explain. After all, why should she stop something that is beneficial to her? She is not a saint, helping her rival out of trouble and then letting her continue to steal her corner. She looked at Shen Yu and said, "Then I'll change my clothes and go to the recording studio." After seeing Shen Yu nod, Luo Zhi walked back into the room. After a while, Luo Zhi came out wearing a white short-sleeved shirt, light blue jeans and white shoes. A breath of youth suddenly rushed towards her. When Shen Yu saw it, his eyes flashed with surprise. Luo Zhi dressed like this, almost making him think that she was still in college. Back then, Luo Zhi was selected as one of the 4 school beauties in Shanghai with such a simple outfit. Luo Zhi was very satisfied when she saw Shen Yu's eyes were stunned. She deliberately dressed like this to see how Shen Yu would react when he saw her in college. The result made her very satisfied. Then the two of them planned to go out. Before leaving, Shen Yu glanced at Jinyue on the sofa and said with a smile, "Jinyue, remember to lock the door when you go out." After that, he closed the door, leaving Jinyue alone in the room, jumping with anger. In the Magic City, in a relatively private coffee shop, Zhu Ji and Lin Feiwan sat opposite each other. After Lin Feiwan came out of Shen Yu's house, she did not return to her villa. Instead, she asked her best friend Zhu Ji to come out directly. Zhu Ji looked at her best friend in front of her, and a trace of guilt suddenly rose in her heart. She was a little afraid to meet Lin Feiwan now. After all, what she was thinking about now was how to be with Shen Yu. Lin Feiwan's face was very bad at this time. She took a big sip of coffee, and then complained to Zhu Ji. "I just went to Shen Yu's place, guess who I saw there? Zhu Ji just parted with Shen Yu and others yesterday. And knew that Luo Zhi stayed at Shen Yu's house last night. But now he had to pretend not to know." She was a little confused, but also a little curious, and approached Lin Feiwan. "Who is it?" "I saw Luo Zhi and Jinyue." Zhu Ji's eyes widened when he heard it, and his face was full of disbelief. She really wasn't pretending this time. She knew that Luo Zhi was staying at Shen Yu's house, but she didn't know that Jinyue was also staying there. This made her very angry. She cursed Jinyue in her heart for being so cunning. She was the only one who behaved well in the 4-member team back in the Magic City. Seeing Zhu Ji's shocked expression, Lin Feiwan continued, You didn't expect it, right? I didn't expect it either. You don't know that when I entered the room, Shen Yu was chatting with Luo Zhi. They were laughing happily, and Luo Zhi was wearing pajamas. I couldn't help it at the time and quarreled with her directly. Zhu Zhi didn't dare to speak casually, so he had to agree, really. A single man and a single woman in the same room is indeed very misleading. That's right. Lin Feiwan took another sip of coffee and continued, I suspect Luo Zhi did it on purpose. If Su Jinyue hadn't walked out of the room later, I would have really believed that something happened between Shen Yu and her, and she would have succeeded. She just wanted me to misunderstand. Zhu Zhi looking at Lin Feiwan, who looked confident. Wan, Shen Yu's divorce with you doesn't seem to be a joke, but rather a serious one. I think. How is that possible? Before she finished speaking, she was interrupted by Lin Feiwan. How can I not know his cleverness? He must have guessed that I would go to his place today, so he deliberately acted with Luo Zhi to make me realize his importance, so that I would not easily divorce him in the future. But he misunderstood. He is so talented, I will not divorce him in the future. Looking at the opposite side talking freely, Zhu Zhi felt a little absurd. She was eager to stay away from Lin Feiwan now, for fear that she would infect her with stupidity. Why didn't she realize that Lin Feiwan was so self-righteous before? Anyone with a discerning eye could clearly see that Shen Yu really wanted to divorce her and end the relationship. As a result, she was still living in the beautiful dream of the past and couldn't extricate herself. She believed that as long as she sincerely admitted her mistakes, Shen Yu would definitely remarry her. When she thought of the fact that Lin Feiwan had complained about Shen Yu to her more than once before, she became even more restless. She wished she could dig out a 3-bedroom apartment with her toes. How could she believe Lin Feiwan's lies so easily at that time? Seeing that Lin Feiwan was unmoved, Zhu Zhi stopped trying to persuade him. After all, it was hard to persuade the damned ghost with good words. This person was already insane. And most importantly, her focus now was not here, but how to win the battle between Luo Zhi, Su Jinyue and even Ji Shuyi. At this time, Lin Feiwan did not realize that Zhu Zhi's mentality had changed. Still chattering about her and Shen Yu's story. Saying that she was busy with work this year, and Shen Yu never complained. Must be inseparable from her. Maybe participating in this love show was not because Mengde got her drunk as he said, but because he took the initiative to ask for it. Just to shine on the show and attract her attention. Zhu Zhi no longer sang the opposite tune at this time. While he despised her in his heart, he nodded from time to time to agree with what Lin Feiwan said. At the same time, he made up his mind to have less contact with this brain-filling freak in the future. Chapter 091 Luo Zhi's Big Explosion. Xingluo Recording Studio. Shen Yu and Luo Zhi first came to the front desk. After seeing Shen Yu, the front desk lady's eyes were full of stars. He hadn't seen such a handsome man for a long time. That pair of peach blossom eyes really made people unable to stop. Knowing that the two were looking for her boss. The front desk lady didn't verify the authenticity at all. Such a handsome boy would definitely not lie. Immediately contacted her boss. After a while, a middle-aged man with simple and clean clothes but a big hair came over. After looking at Shen Yu and the other two, he asked, "Are you Shuyu's friends? We asked Ji Shuyi for help." The middle-aged man smiled and stretched out his hand. "Hello, I'm the boss of Xingluo Recording Studio. My name is Li Luo. You can just call me Brother Li, Shuyi just called me. I reserved a recording studio for you, and there are some instrument teachers." Shen Yu also came up and shook his hand, saying, "Thank you, Brother Li. What's the trouble? Shuyi and I have been friends for several years. This little thing is nothing. I'll let Xiao Zhang take you to the recording studio. If you have any questions, just call me at any time." Shen Yu also nodded. Then, under the leadership of Xiao Zhang at the front desk, he and Luo Zhi came to the door of a recording studio. After Xiao Zhang sent the two to the door, he said, "Well, there are several instrument teachers in this recording studio who have a bad temper. You should be patient for a while. Their abilities are still good. If you really can't stand it, you can talk to our boss to see if you can temporarily replace one." Shen Yu smiled and nodded, "Okay, I know. Thank you, Xiao Zhang." Shen Yu was originally very handsome, and this smile broke into Xiao Zhang's heart. Her face flushed, lowered her head and whispered, "You're welcome. I'll leave first." She quickly fled in 2 steps, feeling her face burning. After seeing her leave, Shen Yu also opened the door and walked in with Luo Zhi. As soon as they entered the recording studio, several middle-aged men with long hair who looked very artistic turned their heads to look at them. Among them, the man sitting in front of the piano. After seeing how young Shen Yu and Luo Zhi were, he looked down on them. He thought, where did this person come from? Just humming, a millionaire tuner will appear. With this face, and finally participating in a variety show, creating a persona. He can start making money in the entertainment industry. The other instrument masters. Although not as obvious as he did, they were almost the same. Shen Yu saw the looks of the others. And he was very unhappy, but he didn't want to bother the boss anymore. After all, it was good enough that he could leave a recording studio and instrument teacher for himself for Ji Shuyi's sake. He immediately suppressed his dissatisfaction and said with a smile, "Hello, teachers. I have to record a few songs today. I hope you will take care of me." As soon as he finished speaking, a sneer came from not far away. Shen Yu immediately looked over and saw the man sitting in front of the piano. After seeing Shen Yu looking at him, he did not restrain himself at all. He said bluntly, "Young man, I am not saying anything bad about you. I have seen many people your age. Not to mention an afternoon, even a day may not be able to complete a song, let alone several songs." The man holding a guitar on the side also smiled and said, "That's right, young people should not think too highly of themselves. Don't want to run before you learn to walk. It's better to go back and accumulate some lyrics and music, and write some really good songs before coming back." The drummer and others on the side, although they did not speak, also nodded in agreement. They naturally did not want to produce some garbage. With the blessing of good songs, they can get more business and become more famous. Shen Yu raised his eyebrows slightly. He didn't want to cause trouble for no reason. Originally, he thought of giving in first and letting them earn enough face. After a few songs were recorded, everyone would be fine. There would be few opportunities to meet again in the future. Unexpectedly, these people were simply pushing their feet. When he took a step back, these people thought he was easy to bully, and actually took 2 steps forward. This made him a little unacceptable. Just when he was about to fight back, Luo Zhi, who hadn't said a word since entering the recording studio, suddenly exploded. The spearhead was directed at the most arrogant piano man. "Who are you? You have the nerve to teach others here. You are all taking advantage of your age. You have a bad temper because of your age, right? You are so good. I want to know what works you have. Tell us about them and let us see your vision." The piano man was speechless in an instant. The other instrument teachers also lowered their heads. If they were really capable, why would they come to this recording studio and be a small instrument teacher, suffering here every day? They would have already held concerts to make money. Luo Zhi had touched their sore spot. Shen Yu also looked at Luo Zhi with some surprise. He didn't expect that she, who had always been gentle and elegant, would have such an unexpected side. He was deeply moved. He hadn't felt this feeling of being protected by others for many years. He looked at Luo Zhi with gratitude, then took Luo Zhi's little hand and put her behind him to prevent those people from getting angry and hurting her by mistake. Luo Zhi saw Shen Yu holding her hand and protecting her behind him. Her face immediately flushed, and her heart felt as sweet as honey. Sure enough, Luo Zhi touched the piano man's sore spot, and his face immediately turned red. What he couldn't stand the most was others saying that his skills were not good, even though he really was not good. He rushed to Shen Yu in anger, and said viciously, "Little ghost, take care of your girlfriend. Without my accompaniment, you can't record the song today. Since it has come to this, Shen Yu doesn't need to worry about these self-righteous guys." Sneered. "Oh? Who knows how good you are? You may not be able to match my song." The piano man's eyes suddenly turned red when he heard it. He stared at Shen Yu and said fiercely, "Boy, today I will let you see what strength is. You will beg me later." As he said, he sat back in front of the piano, took a deep breath and adjusted his breathing. Then he put his hands on the keys and played a complete piano piece. It has to be said that although this guy is a bit hateful, no, very hateful, but he still has a little bit of strength. Based on the skills he just showed, he is more than enough to be a music teacher in a high school. However, given his personality, I'm afraid no academy would be willing to accept him. After all, there are still a considerable number of piano teachers of this level. Chapter 092 Piano Competition. After playing a piece, the pianist stood up proudly. Looking up at Shen Yu with his nose, he said proudly, "Boy, you have seen my strength, right? If you don't get some benefits today, don't even think about asking me to help you record songs." Shen Yu looked at his ignorant look and couldn't help but sneer. If someone who didn't know him saw this, they would think this guy was the only piano master in China, Mr. Chu Lixin. He pretended to bow and said, "Your level is really good. In the Huangpu district of the Magic City, you can at least rank among the top 1,000. It's a very good result." Luo Zhi, who was standing aside, heard Shen Yu's serious show and couldn't help but burst out laughing. She glared at Shen Yu in anger. This guy was really too mean. He actually played a trick on her. The fact that Huangpu district in Shanghai could be ranked in the top 1,000 was not a compliment, but a mockery. As expected, the piano man did not understand what Shen Yu said for a while. He did not react until Luo Zhi burst out laughing. He was so angry that he almost exploded on the spot. If it were not for the rule of law, he would have rushed up to give Shen Yu a massage. He suppressed his anger. The piano man sneered and said, "Little boy, you have succeeded in angering me. The other pianists are all fully booked today. You came here for nothing. Go back now." Shen Yu laughed and sarcastically said, "Really?" Then he looked at Luo Zhi beside him and whispered, "Are you interested in showing off your skills?" Luo Zhi smiled and nodded, then came to the piano, took out a pack of wet wipes from his pocket and wiped all the piano keys and stools. Then he stretched out a finger and gently pressed a few keys on the piano to test the sound. After hearing the sound of the piano, Shen Yu and Luo Zhi frowned almost at the same time. Luo Zhi did not sit down, but walked around to the back of the piano, opened the back cover of the piano, and began to debug. 5 minutes later, Luo Zhi sat back in front of the piano, and said with some disdain, "It's barely usable." This series of actions, although nothing was said, seemed to say everything. First, she wiped the keys and the stool, which was obviously disgusting to the pianist. Then, she tested and tuned the piano, and directly denied the pianist in terms of professionalism. It was really ironic that a pianist didn't even realize that the piano was not in tune. As expected, the pianist looked at Luo Zhi with eyes that seemed to be about to spit fire. After completing all the preparations, Luo Zhi began to play. She played no other song, but the one that the pianist played just now. Luo Zhi's fingers were slender and white, and each one was like a carefully carved work of art, dancing on the keys like dancing butterflies. It was just a beginning. All the instrument teachers in the recording studio opened their eyes wide, looking at the shining Luo Zhi who was playing the piano in astonishment. And the piano boy was so shocked that his eyeballs almost fell to the ground. He couldn't believe that such a beautiful piano sound came from this woman. You know, these instrument teachers are just technically bad, not aesthetically bad. It was natural to hear that. Luo Zhi and the previous piano boy were not at the same level. The gap between the two was not an exaggeration to describe it as a chasm. After the song ended, Luo Zhi stood up from the stool and came to Shen Yu's side. Shen Yu directly raised a thumbs up to her, indicating his high affirmation of her performance just now. After several minutes, the others finally reacted and looked at Luo Zhi with horror. They never thought that a girl in her 20s would have such attainments in piano. Shen Yu smiled and looked at the piano man, teasing, "My friend's level is not very high, but he can barely take your place." Hearing Shen Yu's ridicule, the piano man's face suddenly became very ugly. He didn't dare to slander Luo Zhi now, so he had to point all the spearheads at Shen Yu and said, "Humph, you still rely on women, you are really a gigolo, you are really low. If you have the ability, you can also do this." Then Buddy will turn around and leave without saying a word. Luo Zhi was a little indignant when she heard this, and immediately wanted to go up to argue. Shen Yu was quick-witted and quickly stopped her. Then he looked at the piano man again, his eyes cold. "Let's make a deal. If I go up and play a piece that's better than you, you'll get out of this Xingluo recording studio today." The piano man's heart suddenly sank when he heard this. What he just said was to leave this recording studio, not to leave Xingluo recording studio as a company. He didn't want to lose his job because of a bet. But he thought again. Shen Yu was not his boss. How could he fire him? He was just talking nonsense. Even if he agreed, he would have no way to lose in the end. And he could pretend in front of his old brothers. The piano man thought it through and agreed without saying a word. Instantly, the instrument teachers next to him all looked serious. I didn't expect that the piano man would play such a big game. Shen Yu also understood what he was thinking. But he didn't plan to let him go. It was nothing more than a favor to Jinyue. Then, Shen Yu took a big step and sat in front of the piano. He did not start playing immediately. Instead, he sat quietly in front of the piano, without speaking or moving. He sat there straight like a tree. 2 minutes passed, and Shen Yu was still like this. Several instrument teachers looked at each other, wondering what Shen Yu was doing. The piano man thought that Shen Yu was not skilled enough and did not dare to play. His eyes were full of teasing. Only Luo Zhi was different. She knew clearly that Shen Yu did not do this for no reason, but was looking for emotions. As the saying goes, laymen watch the excitement, while experts watch the doorway. Without reaching a certain level, you don't know the doorway at all. The so-called pianist not only plays the piano, but also needs to interpret the emotions that need to be expressed in the piano music. Like the piano masters in the world today, every time they play, their emotions are extremely full and passionate. With superb skills, they can bring the audience into the artistic conception of the piano music. Of course, there are also a few special piano masters. They did not mobilize the emotions of the audience, but simply showed off their skills. With their ultimate piano playing skills, they won the title of piano master. However, none of them became the top 10 piano masters. They were also looked down upon in the piano world and were called factory school. Chapter 93: The birth of China's second piano master. Every piano master. They are all unique. Each has his own unique musical style. It is a treasure in the piano world. But the factory school is different, their music style is fixed. It's just based on superb piano skills, so there is no uniqueness. Therefore, it is not recognized by many piano masters. Christian Thomas, the world's #1 piano master, even publicly denounced it. This factory model has set the piano industry back at least 10 years. After Shen Yu came into this world, I also practiced the piano for a while. But after a few months, he stopped because he found that there was nothing to practice. A few minutes passed again. Shen Yu finally opened his eyes. Then he slowly placed his 10 fingers on the keys and pressed them gently, his eyes full of tenderness. Every note is like a drizzle in the sky, nourishing the hearts of everyone present. As the closest person to a piano master, Luo Zhi, the feeling was even more real, as if I had been struck by lightning, and I couldn't recover for a long time. Although she had never heard the piece played by Shen Yu. But it is also clear that this is definitely not a randomly made-up piano piece. The emotions contained in it are very full and coherent. Moreover, Shen Yu's piano playing skills are also extraordinary. It is the level of a real piano master. That is to say. In fact, the second piano master in China is not her, who is one step away. But it was her sweetheart, Shen Yu. Perfect emotions coupled with extraordinary playing skills. It is easy to bring everyone into the artistic conception of the piano music. A beautiful and gentle girl suddenly appeared in her mind. At the same time, I also feel the performer's deep love for her. It seems like a song of confession. When I think of this, Luo Zhi trembled all over instantly, her heart almost jumping out of her throat. He stared at Shen Yu intently. The affection in his eyes is so strong that it cannot be dissolved. My whole body is burning. She couldn't wait to know who this song was written for. She had a premonition at this moment. This song seems to be written for myself instead of others. She didn't know why she felt this way. But somehow, she felt that this song was written for her. The song ends when Shen Yu stopped moving his hands. Luo Zhi and the instrument teachers were still immersed in the artistic conception of the piano music. Shen Yu was also quite satisfied with his performance. I haven't played the piano for 2 years, but I didn't expect that my hands are not unfamiliar. The whole performance was perfect. If there are any flaws, it was this cheap piano that limited his performance. Par. In the end, Luo Zhi came to her senses first. She looked at Shen Yu and clapped excitedly. The applause woke up the other instrument teachers. Everyone looked at Shen Yu with ardent eyes and gave applause generously. The piano man behind Shen Yu. At this time, his face was pale and his body was shaking. He never expected that Shen Yu's attainments in piano. She is actually more than one level higher than the woman next to her. At the women's level. He will never be able to reach that level in his entire life, let alone Shen Yu's level. But even so, he was unwilling to give in. Shen Yu stood up, looked at the stubborn piano man, chuckled and said, "My piano skills are pretty good." Although the piano man looked pale, he was still unwilling to give in. "I was wrong. You win, kid. I'm leaving the recording studio now." Shen Yu would naturally not let him go easily, and said coldly, "You haven't forgotten, have you? We just said that you should get out of Xingluo recording studio and resign." The piano man sneered when he heard this. He had thought of a countermeasure long before Shen Yu started playing. As he walked out, he said contemptuously, "Humph, who do you think you are? You can fire me if you want to. You are the boss here." The piano man was saying. Suddenly, the door of the recording studio was opened with a bang. Li Luo walked in with a livid face. Looking at the piano man, he said coldly, "He doesn't have the right to fire you, but I do. You're fired. Go to the finance department to collect your salary and get out." The moment the piano man saw his boss coming in, he felt something was wrong. But before he could open his mouth, with just one sentence, Li Luo sentenced him to death. His face turned pale instantly, and he looked at Li Luo pitifully. "Boss, if you say one more word, I guarantee that you won't have a place in this recording studio in the entire Magic City. Many customers have complained about your bad attitude before, but I didn't think anything of it. I didn't expect you to be so rude. Get out of here right now." The piano man saw that his boss was really angry. He was so scared that he swallowed the rest of his words and ran to the finance department to settle his salary. So far, this farce finally came to an end. After driving away the piano man, Li Luo then came to Shen Yu's side and said with a smile on his face, "Brother, you must have been so miserable hiding this from your brother. It turns out you are Shen Yu. If Shui hadn't called me just now, I would have almost missed you. I listen to your songs every day now." Li Luo was praising him so much, and Shen Yu was not the kind of person who would put on airs. He smiled and said, "Thank you, Brother Li, for your love. This is my fault. I was thinking about recording these songs as soon as possible." Li Luo heard this and waved his hand and said, "How can I blame you? Now everyone on the internet is urging you to record as soon as possible. I just didn't expect you to come to my studio. This is such a surprise. Brother, what do you think of these instrument teachers? If not, I will change a group for you now. Don't worry, our studio will serve you today." After saying this, he glanced coldly at the instrument teachers in the room. Those who saw this felt cold in their hearts. Especially the guitarist who had lent his support earlier was filled with panic. Shen Yu saw this. He quickly waved his hand and refused. "No need, Brother Li. These teachers think that I am young and need some time to settle down. Ignorance is not a crime." Li Luo's expression finally calmed down. Then he continued. "Well, you can record the previous songs first. There is a Steinway piano in my brother's studio. I will have someone bring it down now so that I can help you record your piano piece." Shen Yu became somewhat alert when he heard this, but his expression did not change. This Li Luo is not a simple person. Since he could hear his own piano music, it meant that he had already reached the door. But he didn't come in. It was not until the piano man started to act like a spoiled child that he came in to support himself. It is really not easy to owe someone a favor. Chapter 94, Li Luo's request. Shen Yu is not like those internet singers. It takes one day to record a song. Some even require word-by-word recording. His recording process is very simple. First, under his direction, the accompaniment of the song was made. Then we entered the recording studio and started recording officially. In only the first time of the first song. Because Shen Yu was curious about the structure of the recording studio, he couldn't adapt to it and tried again. Everything else is done in one go. But after recording these 5 songs, it took more than 4 hours. Mainly these instrument teachers. The tempo of recording the accompaniment is quite slow. Finally, Shen Yu also recorded the piano piece he had played not long ago. The piano used. Of course, it was the Steinway piano that Li Luo had just taken down. When the two arrived, the sun was shining brightly, but now it has begun to set. When Shen Yu and the others were about to say hello to Li Luo and leave, as if Li Luo had received the news in advance, walked straight in. Looking at Shen Yu with a smile on his face, he said, "Brother, have you finished recording everything?" "It's all recorded." After hearing Shen Yu's answer, Li Luo's heart was like an earthquake and he couldn't calm down for a long time. He has been working in the recording studio industry for more than 20 years. We have received countless singers, including some singers of the highest rank. It is no exaggeration to say that there are definitely no more than a handful of singers like Shen Yu who can record 5 songs in such a short time. The importance he held for Li Luo in his heart rose to a new level. He smiled and said, "It's getting late now. Brother, please do me a favor and let me make some arrangements for tonight." Upon hearing this, Shen Yu did not refuse immediately, but looked at Luo Zhi beside him. In fact, he didn't want to have dinner with Li Luo at this moment. But they just did me a favor. If I reject this directly, it would be too disrespectful. Seeing Shen Yu looking at Luo Zhi, Li Luo was also a smart guy, and he said flatteringly, "Luo Zhi, please have pity on my brother. It is really difficult to run into Shen Yu. Please be kind and give my brother a chance to perform." When Luo Zhi heard Li Luo asking for her opinion, I was very happy in my heart, but I didn't show it on my face. Instead, he threw the problem back to Shen Yu and asked him to make the decision. "Don't ask me. I can't make the decision for Shen Yu. You invited her, not me." Hearing Luo Zhi say this, Li Luo felt relieved. The fact that she could answer like this showed that Luo Zhi did not resist her invitation. Seeing this, Shen Yu thought for a moment before saying, "Then I'll trouble you, brother Li." Upon hearing this, Li Luo said excitedly, "No trouble, no trouble. I've already booked a restaurant. I see you guys don't have a car, why don't we go together?" Not long after, Luo Zhi and Shen Yu, under the leadership of Li Luo, came to a restaurant with a very nice environment. Li Luo also knew Shen Yu's alcohol tolerance, so he was very tactful and did not mention this, but directly served a pot of top-quality tea. After the three of them had their fill of tea and food, only then did Shen Yu look at Li Luo with a smile. "From the moment I sat at this table, Shen Yu could tell that something was wrong with Li Luo, and he hesitated to speak. I immediately took the initiative to bring it up. Brother Li, do you need my help with something?" "Don't worry, I will do my best to help you." Li Luo's eyes lit up when he heard this. He just didn't know how to start, so he smiled and said, "To be honest, I want you to write a song for me. Don't worry, the price is definitely not a problem. I will definitely not let you suffer a loss." Shen Yu was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect that Li Luo came to him because of this matter. When it comes to writing songs for others, Shen Yu is not opposed to it. After all, in my mind, at least there are tens of thousands of songs. He doesn't have time to sing all these songs. Besides, the songs from my past life can make me. It's a great thing that all of them appear in this world. He looked at Li Luo and said with a smile, "I didn't expect Brother Li to be a singer. I was a little careless and didn't recognize him." Luo Zhi also looked at Li Luo twice more. "I gave up when I found that I really couldn't recognize it." When Li Luo heard Shen Yu's words, his face suddenly turned red. "Don't say that. It's normal that you don't recognize me. I sing folk songs. From my debut till now, I have only written one good song. And the song is popular, but I am not. Later, I lost my ambition, so I opened this recording studio." Shen Yu did not refuse upon hearing this. "How about this, Brother Li, send me your song later and I'll see if there's anything suitable for you. But I can't guarantee that I can write it." It's okay. Just remember this one thing, I'm not in a hurry. I'll be waiting for your news anytime." When Li Luo heard Shen Yu's agreement, he smiled so hard that he couldn't stop. As for what Shen Yu said, there is no guarantee that it can be written. He didn't believe it at all. Who is Shen Yu? Writing songs on the show is just like playing. It's not that rare for such a person to create an original song. It's just a piece of cake. Seeing that the business had been completed and a few people had eaten their fill, Shen Yu immediately said that it was getting late and he had things to do tomorrow, so he went home first. Upon hearing this, Li Luo immediately expressed his willingness to personally send the two back. Shen Yu refused with a smile, and he and Luo Zhi took a taxi at the door and returned to their residence. Li Luo looked at the taxi going away and could no longer suppress the smile on his face. After returning to his car, there was no immediate fire. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and muttered to himself, "Old Mar, let you be so arrogant for a few more days. It's just luck that you got a good song. Look how capable you are. I will get one in a few days too." In the taxi, Luo Zhi looked at Shen Yu beside her and asked doubtfully, "Ayu, why did you agree to let Li Luo write a song for him?" Shen Yu chuckled and said, "I don't want to owe anyone a favor, and one song is nothing. I can write it quickly." Luo Zhi actually didn't quite agree with his point of view. She believes that any song written by Shen Yu must be a masterpiece. As long as he can sing it himself, he will definitely lose out if he lets others sing it. But seeing that Shen Yu had already promised Li Luo, she felt embarrassed to ask him to change his mind. The two then talked about the release of the songs they recorded in the afternoon. The current domestic music market, monopolized by the three major music platforms, Penguin, NetEase and Kugu. There are also some small music platforms that are struggling to survive under the suppression of the three major platforms. But gradual disappearance has become an inevitable trend. Chapter 95. It's Luo Zhi's Luo Zhi. Shen Yu naturally wouldn't want to make trouble for himself. Release your own songs on those small platforms that already have few users. Of course, it was released on the three major platforms. The two talked for a while and finally decided to publish it on NetEase. As a new music giant, NetEase, it is still very powerful in terms of traffic and support. As a veteran giant, Kugu is actually on the decline, with only a pitiful number of new users. If it weren't for the large number of song copyrights it holds, it would have collapsed long ago. And another giant, Penguin. With the support of Penguin as its parent company, there are no taboos. As the saying goes, big stores bully customers, and they frequently expose shady contracts, etc. If it weren't for the financial support from the head office, it would have collapsed long ago. After much thought, NetEase is the best choice. Shen Yu is a man of action. Once he has made a decision, he will not hesitate. I registered a NetEase account on the spot. I released all 5 of my songs. Then I turned off my phone without paying attention to the data. After returning home, Luo Zhi looked around but didn't see Jinyue. Then he returned to the room and found that Jinyue's luggage was also missing. I immediately realized that Luo Zhi had returned to her home. When I thought about being alone with Shen Yu, my heart feels as sweet as if I had eaten honey. Seeing that it was getting late, I still have to visit the teacher tomorrow. Shen Yu took the initiative to remind him. You should go to bed early tonight, otherwise you will get dark circles under your eyes, which will not look good. Luo Zhi stuck out her tongue when she heard that and quickly said no. At the moment Shen Yu turned around, Luo Zhi couldn't help herself after all, and called out to Shen Yu with a blushing face. I asked the question that had been bothering me for the whole afternoon. Ayu, what's the name of the piano piece you wrote in the recording studio? Who is it for? Shen Yu turned around upon hearing this. Luo Zhi immediately lowered her head and looked at her toes, not daring to look into Shen Yu's eyes. The two hands subconsciously pulled together. My fingers were pinched so hard that they turned blue. He was even more nervous, fearing that Shen Yu would say something that would be hard for him to accept. At this moment, she had already begun to regret. If I had known this earlier, I would have just tapped from the side in the future, so I wouldn't have to suffer like this. Shen Yu looked at Luo Zhi with anticipation and a bit of fear on his face. A smile appeared on my face involuntarily. It is impossible to say that he has no feelings for Shen Yu. How can people not feel the heat when they are close to the fire? It's just that he is emotionally slow and doesn't know how to express himself. So back then, I chose the enthusiastic and cheerful Lin Feiwan. I didn't expect that Luo Zhi had waited for me for 3 years. And during this period, he never looked for me once. In the afternoon, Luo Zhi abandoned her usual elegance and grace. The moment you stand up for yourself, the shackles in his heart were completely broken. From that moment on, he had made his decision. That's why I played that piano piece. He originally thought Luo Zhi would ask him on the spot. After all, as a piano genius, it is very easy to hear the artistic conception of the music. But he didn't expect that. Luo Zhi actually managed to hold back until now before speaking. Shen Yu did not let Luo Zhi wait any longer and spoke directly. The name of this piano piece is To Luo Zhi. Luo Zhi opened her eyes wide when she heard this, and looked at Shen Yu with surprise. I didn't care about being shy at all, I said excitedly. Really? She couldn't believe her ears now. A coward is afraid of happiness and will get hurt if he touches cotton. So she couldn't wait to verify it. Did I hear it wrong? After seeing Shen Yu nod. Still unsure, he asked again. Is it the Luo Zhi from Luo Zhi? It's Luo Zhi's Luo Zhi. As soon as she finished speaking, she, who had been trying her best to control her emotions. I couldn't hold it anymore, my body was shaking. Tears flowed freely, and I couldn't hold back the tears. She suddenly threw herself into Shen Yu's arms. I hugged him tightly and buried my head deep in his chest. Sobbing softly. Shen Yu suddenly felt distressed. He patted her back gently with his hands and comforted her softly. But Luo Zhi seemed to want to vent all the grievances she had experienced in the past 3 years, and no matter how Shen Yu tried to persuade her, it was useless. Shen Yu had no choice but to bend down and pick him up by the waist. Sit on the sofa and comfort slowly. After 10 minutes or so, Luo Zhi finally let out her anger. Seeing her tearful face, Shen Yu couldn't help but laugh. Seeing this, Luo Zhi couldn't help but said angrily. Why are you like this? Are you happy that I cried? I'm not happy that you're crying. As he said this, he looked her up and down in an exaggerated manner. Luo Zhi finally reacted. I am now lying in Shen Yu's arms. As if by magic, her little face instantly turned red like a ripe peach. Even the roots of his ears were bright red. He immediately struggled to get down. But it's easy to go up, but hard to go down. How could Shen Yu let her escape from the tiger's mouth so easily? Immediately hold it tightly. Luo Zhi struggled for a while, but when it didn't work, she stopped moving. Leaning obediently in Shen Yu's arms. In fact, she subconsciously didn't want to leave. It's just that I can't save face. I didn't use much strength when I broke free just now. The two of them just like this. It's so romantic to snuggle together and talk about everything. Looking at the charming Luo Zhi in his arms. Shen Yu swallowed subconsciously. Luo Zhi leaned in her arms and saw everything clearly. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. He even boldly reached out and touched Shen Yu's Adam's apple. Seeing this, Shen Yu couldn't bear it any longer. Looking at the face that keeps approaching. Luo Zhi's heart was in her throat, and she clenched her hands tightly together. With eyes tightly closed. His face was full of tension and anticipation. After a while, Luo Zhi, who didn't feel any movement. He slightly opened his eyes with some doubt. Then he saw Shen Yu looking at him with a smile on his face. Thinking of my own ugly behavior, I was completely ripped off by him. Luo Zhi was immediately unhappy and was about to struggle. As a result, the next moment, Shen Yu suddenly lowered his head and held those two soft pieces in his mouth. Luo Zhi suddenly felt as if she was struck by lightning. Their whole person froze in place. His mind went blank and he responded to Shen Yu mechanically. Several minutes passed. A feeling of suffocation brought her back to reality. She quickly reached out and pushed Shen Yu's head aside. Breathing heavily. Looking at Shen Yu with a smile on his face. With a face full of shame and anger, he said angrily. Are you trying to suffocate me? Chapter 96. Life is long, and we are not in a hurry. Shen Yu spread his hands innocently and said. I didn't know you couldn't breathe. Hearing this, Luo Zhi punched Shen Yu's chest lightly and said angrily. This is my first kiss, I don't know anything about this. Then let's get to know each other better. After a while, Luo Zhi finally escaped from Shen Yu's embrace. I ran to the mirror and looked at my swollen lips, wanting to cry but unable to cry. With a sad face, she rushed to Shen Yu and said. Shen Yu, look at me like this, how can I go to see the teacher tomorrow? Shen Yu couldn't help laughing when he saw those two thick European and American-style lips. He argued with a smile. You can't just blame me for this. Who was it just now? Before he finished speaking, Luo Zhi rushed up like a little wild cat. covering Shen Yu's mouth. Blushing, she said, "Don't say it, don't say it." Upon hearing this, Shen Yu sobbed and nodded. Then, Shen Yu took out the ointment for swelling reduction from the medicine box. Carefully apply it on Luo Zhi. Seeing that it was getting late, the two of them washed up and returned to their rooms. Seeing Shen Yu was about to return to his room, Luo Zhi thought for a long time before speaking. "Tonight." Seeing Luo Zhi's nervous and frightened face. "But I still summoned up the courage to call myself." Shen Yu took 2 steps at a time and came to her side, gently holding her in his arms. Whispered, "There's no need to be like this. Life is long and we're not in a rush. Some things don't have to be done overnight." Hearing Shen Yu say this, Luo Zhi's tense body finally returned to normal. She let out a long breath and then said playfully, "What are you thinking about? What I want to say is don't stay up late tonight. We still have to visit the teacher tomorrow." As he said that, he pushed Shen Yu out and closed the door. After closing the door, Luo Zhi leaned against it, gasping for breath. His face was so red that it looked like blood was about to drip out. He rubbed his burning cheeks fiercely with both hands and cursed inwardly. "Luo Zhi, how dare you be so bold?" The next morning, Shen Yu had just changed his clothes and was about to go for a morning run. As soon as he opened the door, Jinyue was standing at the door, holding breakfast and looking at him with a smile. I was caught off guard and was immediately shocked. Shen Yu said unhappily, "Why are you here?" Jinyue ignored him. He walked straight in. "You should go for a morning run. You don't need to bring breakfast when you come back." Shen Yu was speechless, but he didn't say anything and just walked out the door. After Jinyue put breakfast on the table, he went straight to Luo Zhi's room and turned the door handle. After finding the door locked, only then did he visibly relax. After she returned home yesterday, she has been worried about what will happen after she left. What super friendly things happened between Shen Yu and Luo Zhi. I tossed and turned all night yesterday and couldn't sleep. I don't know how long it took before I fell into a drowsy sleep. Then in the morning I was woken up by the alarm I set last night. After buying breakfast, I went to Shen Yu's door early to wait. It's not that he didn't want to go in, but she really didn't know the password to Shen Yu's house. But even if the door is locked, she didn't completely let down her guard either. He knocked on Luo Zhi's door and shouted, "Luo Zhi, get up quickly, I brought you breakfast." After 5 or 6 minutes, Luo Zhi came out in her pajamas, sleepy-eyed. He looked at Jinyue with some doubt and said, "Why are you here so early?" Jinyue would definitely not admit it. "I was afraid that something might happen to them, so I came here early to wait." After seeing Luo Zhi's expression and movements were the same as usual, only then did he completely let down his guard and urged, "Don't ask me any more questions. Go wash up. I brought breakfast." After, the two of them sat at the dining table and enjoyed breakfast while chatting. When Luo Zhi asked how Jinyue got in, Jinyue immediately said with a look of grievance, "I've been standing at the door for more than 20 minutes. I came in when Shen Yu went out for his morning run." Luo Zhi burst out laughing when she heard this. As Shen Yu's official girlfriend, she naturally couldn't let a wolf into their house. Let in Jinyue, the pervert who was coveting her master. It is also impossible for him to be so generous as to tell Jinyue the password of Shen Yu's room. What's more, she doesn't know the password now. More than half an hour later, Shen Yu walked in sweating profusely. Seeing Shen Yu, who was radiating masculine charm, Luo Zhi and the others blushed again. Shen Yu greeted the two of them. "Then I went to the bathroom, took a shower, and changed into clean clothes. Then he came to the dining table and started eating the breakfast brought by Jinyue. He looked at Jinyue and asked curiously, 'Why are you here? We don't have time to play with you today. We have to go visit the teacher later.' Jinyue rolled her eyes at him in annoyance. 'I'm here to bring breakfast to Luo Zhi, not to you. You're just here by the way, so just eat it. Why are you asking so many questions?' At this time, Luo Zhi finally understood Jinyue's intention. This girl is here to check on me. But she was a step too late, as she and Shen Yu had already confirmed their relationship last night. After Shen Yu finished his meal, Jinyue was also very perceptive and knew that the two were about to set off. I didn't stay any longer, I just said goodbye and went home to catch up on my sleep. Noticing nothing unusual, she could finally rest in peace. As for Shen Yu and Luo Zhi, after packing up a little, I set off for the Magic City Drama Academy. It's summer vacation now. There weren't many people inside the college, and I only met 3 or 2 younger classmates along the way. Shen Yu and Luo Zhi came to the teacher's apartment hand in hand, carrying some fruits and supplements. Luo Zhi knocked gently on this familiar door. After a while, with a creak, the door opened from the inside. Jinyue, who was wearing a light blue cheongsam, saw Luo Zhi outside the door. He immediately jumped up excitedly and shouted into the house, "Mom, my senior sister is here." He then quickly welcomed Luo Zhi in. When Luo Zhi pulled Shen Yu in, she realized that there was another person there. My attention was focused on my senior sister just now and I didn't notice it. But after seeing that familiar face, Jinyue lost his composure again. Looking at Shen Yu excitedly. "Shen Yu, you are Shen Yu, right?" Shen Yu nodded and put the gift on the ground. Nodded and said, "I'm Shen Yu." At this time, Professor Liu also came over. Seeing Luo Zhi holding Shen Yang's hand, I immediately understood their relationship. The smile on his face became even brighter. She was truly happy for her beloved disciple. Chapter 97, Visiting the Teacher. When Shen Yu started dating another girl, she saw it more than once. His beloved disciple was alone and sad. Her heart was about to break. Now that I see that the two of them have turned their bad luck into good luck, I can finally put aside the worry in my heart. After welcoming the two of them in warmly, Professor Liu took Luo Zhi's hand and started chatting about family matters. Jinyue poured tea for the others, looking at Shen Yu with excitement. She is very interested in Shen Yu. Ever since I heard the song Looking into the Window, I couldn't help but become curious. Of course, it's curiosity within the normal range. After all, she just saw her senior sister holding Shen Yu's hand. It is obvious that this person is 90% his senior brother-in-law. In the end, Jinyue couldn't resist his curiosity. I took the initiative to talk to him shyly. "Well, senior brother-in-law, I really like your Kai Ling, especially the opera part in it." Shen Yu's mouth twitched slightly when he heard this. He smiled and said, "Just call me brother-in-law. My opera singing is just average. It's a little worse than your senior sister, not to mention Professor Liu." Hearing Shen Yu say this, Liu Yao, who was chatting with Luo Zhi, immediately interrupted and said, "Shen Yu, you are a pretty good kid. You haven't lost yourself in all the praise. Your singing voice is still lacking a bit of flavor. If you have time in the future, come to me and I will give you some lessons." Shen Yu was grateful when he heard this. He also knew that Professor Liu was willing to teach him opera singing because he had mastered opera singing skills well. But more importantly, Luo Zhi was holding his hand as he walked in today, so he was able to benefit from Luo Zhi's help. Professor Liu Yao in front of us is a leading figure in Yu opera, one of the 8 major Chinese operas. There are countless people who want to become her disciples every day. Among them are many talented opera performers. But after she accepted Luo Zhi as her last disciple, she announced that she would no longer accept any more disciples. Just an ordinary professor in a drama school. Help these future backbone forces of opera culture to lay a solid foundation. Shen Yu also quickly stood up and thanked Professor Liu. "Thank you, Professor Liu. Luo Zhi and I will definitely come to consult you more often in the future." Professor Liu immediately showed a teachable look. He turned around and started chatting with his beloved disciple. Liu Yao is very strict with his disciples. In addition, Luo Zhi only accepted 5 disciples in total. Luo Zhi's for senior brothers and sisters are now the mainstays of their respective theaters. If Luo Zhi hadn't been more talented at piano, she had already been thrown into the theater by Professor Liu. No, the two of them haven't talked for long. Liu Yao took Luo Zhi upstairs. "I want to see if her skills have declined." Shen Yu was also somewhat surprised to see Professor Liu's swift and decisive actions. No wonder he could become a Yu opera master. Given this attitude, it would be strange if it didn't succeed. As if seeing Shen Yu's surprise, Jinyue beside him explained with a smile. "Brother-in-law, don't mind it. My mother is like this. My senior brothers and sisters are like this every time they come to visit my mother. If their skills decline, my mother doesn't care how angry they are outside. They still have to stand at attention and be scolded. Shen Yu nodded and sighed. Professor Liu is a truly responsible teacher. As the saying goes, strict teachers produce excellent students. Shen Yu and his companion stayed here for more than 2 hours. After declining Professor Liu's invitation to have lunch together. So he took a taxi and went straight back to the cabin. After returning to the cabin, the two of them sat on the sofa. Luo Zhi leaned gently on Shen Yu's shoulder, squinted her eyes and smiled, saying, Master has agreed to help us contact a theater to shoot the MV. Now we just need a filming team. Shen Yu heard this, lowered his head and thought for a while. I'm afraid that the general filming team can't meet my requirements. Lao Huang should have a way. I'll contact him and ask him for help. Anyway, he also wants to play the troupe owner. After hearing this, Luo Zhi shook her head and said, Why would we need Huang Ming's help? Isn't there a ready-made one? Shen Yu looked down at Luo Zhi and said with a smile, Do you know him? Luo Zhi rolled her eyes at her and said directly, You forgot about Jinyue. How could a movie queen not know the filming team? Shen Yu suddenly woke up from his dream when he heard this. He patted his thigh and said, Yeah, how could I forget Jinyue? She should know him. Next. Luo Zhi took out her cell phone and called Su Jinyue. Less than 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Luo Zhi trotted over and opened the door, only to find Su Jinyue standing outside. Su Jinyue stuck out her tongue at him and started complaining after she walked in. If you really need help, just move forward. If you really need help, just move backward. Remember me. Shen Yu touched his nose awkwardly when he heard this. Look at what you said. When will it be unnecessary for people to pass backwards? Su Jinyue put her hands on her hips and glared at him. Said hatefully. You are a little too forgetful. You just kicked me out yesterday. That's not to chase you away. I clearly asked you to get the key to open the door. You can't not go home. Looking at Shen Yu, who was unmoved, Su Jinyue sat on the sofa angrily, sulking. At this time, Shen Yu also walked into the kitchen and started cooking lunch. Although Su Jinyue felt a little resentful, but still very generous. After sitting for a while, he took out his phone to help Shen Yu contact the filming team. As a talented film queen of the new generation, these are not difficult tasks for her at all. Soon, we contacted a relatively capable filming team. Seeing this, Luo Zhi said excitedly. Jinyue, thank you for helping us. Su Jinyue heard this and immediately waved her hand. No, there's no need to thank me. I'm helping Shen Yu. Helping Shen Yu is helping me, and helping me is helping Shen Yu. There is no difference. Hearing Luo Zhi's words, Su Jinyue seemed to have received an electric shock. She stood there in a daze, motionless. It took me a long time to react. She looked at Luo Zhi with horror. He pointed at her with a trembling finger. You two are together. Luo Zhi folded her hands and placed them on her legs, and said shyly. Yes, together. Last night. After seeing Luo Zhi nod, Su Jinyue's anger could no longer be contained. He stood up from the sofa in an instant. He stared at Luo Zhi closely and said, I knew you had bad intentions in living in Shen Yu's house. You are really too cunning. Luo Zhi laughed when she heard this, and she did not deny it. She was staying at Shen Yu's house because it was Mengda's idea. She also admitted that she had an agenda, which was to date Shen Yu. Chapter 098, Your vocal cords are broken. Seeing that Luo Zhi was not ashamed, but proud of it. For a time, Su Jinyue didn't know what to say. She was afraid of what happened between them last night. So I was waiting at the door of Shen Yu's house early this morning. After entering the room, I found that the two of them slept in separate rooms, and Luo Zhi's door was locked. She didn't find anything unusual, so she breathed a sigh of relief. I didn't expect that. My guess finally became a reality. The two of them were actually together last night. When I think about how hard it is for me. I just fell in love with a man, and in a blink of an eye, this man became someone else's boyfriend. I felt aggrieved and my eyes couldn't help but turn red. Seeing this, Luo Zhi couldn't help but feel flustered and didn't know what to do. The two were silent for a long while. Only then did Su Jinyue adjust herself again. She looked at Luo Zhi and said seriously. What stage are you at now? R. Luo Zhi obviously did not expect that Jinyue would ask this question, and was a little confused for a moment. Jinyue frowned slightly and asked again. Luo Zhi then whispered. I didn't do anything, just. Your vocal cords are broken. Oh, just a hug and a kiss, is that all? Jinyue looked at Shen Yu, who was busy in the kitchen. Then he looked at Luo Zhi and said with a solemn oath. Luo Zhi, I won't give up. As long as you two haven't gotten married, I still have a chance. Luo Zhi didn't care at all when she heard this. This was what happened last night. When she heard Jinyue's words, she was still a little scared. But after confirming the relationship with Shen Yu, it didn't matter anymore. She spread her hands and said with a smile. If you want to steal my girl, go ahead. You know without me telling you how slow Shen Yu is in relationships, and is very loyal. You might end up with nothing. Jinyue snorted coldly. Don't be too proud too soon, or you'll cry later. After saying that, he snorted and turned away, no longer paying attention to Luo Zhi. Not long after, Shen Yu came out with a few dishes. Luo Zhi, Jinyue is here to eat. After sitting down, Shen Yu looked at Jinyue's angry expression. He asked curiously. Hey, what's wrong, Jinyue, who offended you again? You. How did I provoke? Before he finished speaking, Luo Zhi stopped him and said with a smile. Don't worry about her, just eat. Shen Yu heard this and did not ask any more questions. It was obvious that there was some little secret between the two of them that they didn't want me to know. Then he didn't ask any more questions and concentrated on dealing with the food on the table. After dinner, Jinyue said nothing, glanced at Shen Yu coldly, and turned away. Shen Yu was confused by this wave of operations. He looked at Luo Zhi doubtfully and said. I didn't provoke her. I didn't say a few words to her after she came in. Why are you so angry? Luo Zhi helped him put away the dishes and chopsticks, and said with a smile. Okay, you don't understand women's affairs. Jinyue has already contacted the filming team for you. Now we are just waiting for your script and Huang Ming to arrive. When it came to business, Shen Yu stopped speculating and said. I'll work overtime tonight to write the script, then talk to Huang Ming about the time, and try to record the MV before the next show starts. After the two of them cleaned the kitchen together, they did not go out to play. Like most ordinary couples in love, cuddling on the sofa watching TV, we are so sweet. I don't know how long it took. A cell phone ring suddenly rang, breaking the harmony between the two. Luo Zhi picked up the phone on the table and handed it to Shen Yu. Shen Yu glanced at the caller ID and answered the call directly. Hello Xiaoqi, what can I do for you? Master Ayu, it's like this. The physical book of your Ghost Blows Out the Light has been completed. You haven't appeared in the previous 7 books. This time, our editor-in-chief would like to invite you to hold a new book launch event. When Shen Yu heard this, he wanted to refuse immediately. He never liked this occasion. Wouldn't it be better to just make money while doing nothing like before? At this time, the editor named Xiaoqi continued. Master, the fans of the book also want to meet you. We know that you live in Shanghai, so we can hold the launch event in Shanghai. Shen Yu heard this and lowered his head to think for a while. Now he no longer hides his talent. I don't have as much free time as before. I'm afraid it will be difficult to find time to write novels in the future. Finally I agreed. Then I'll take part this time, but I don't have much free time, so it would be best if it could be finalized in the next 2 days. At this time, in an office building in Hangzhou, a young-looking beauty wearing a work badge. After hearing Shen Yu agree, he clenched his right fist and his face was full of excitement. She is Xiaoqi, the editor who specifically connects with Shen Yu. Shen Yu only wrote 8 volumes of Ghost Blows Out the Light. When the first 7 physical books were released, she also called Shen Yu to ask. But without exception, they were all rejected directly. This time the editor-in-chief gave himself a death order. We must make Shen Yu agree to attend the launch event. She has already prepared for a long battle. As a result, before she could finish the words she had worked so hard to prepare, Shen Yu agreed directly, which made her a little stunned. Then, she reacted and said quickly. I will ask the editor now and call him back later. After hanging up the phone, he rushed to the editor-in-chief's office excitedly. Magic City. Luo Zhi leaned in Shen Yu's arms, looked at him with some surprise and said. You can actually write novels. Of course, otherwise how would I have lived these past few years? It was all thanks to that little bit of loser. Yanzu and his friends don't even give me free love electricity, woo woo woo. Luo Zhi asked with a smile. What novel did you write? Could you tell me the name? What's so inconvenient about this? Ghost blows out the light. Ghost blows out the light. Luo Zhi exclaimed when she heard this, and stared at Shen Yu intently. His face was full of surprise. Still a little uncertain, I asked. People light candles, ghosts blow out the lights go out when the cock crows, and you can't touch the gold. Is this the ghost that blows out the lights? Shen Yu smiled immediately. Apart from this ghost blows out the light, there seems to be nothing else. Luo Zhi screamed when she heard this, and tightly grasped Shen Yu's arm, and said excitedly. I have read your book and I like it very much. I read it because I saw the author's name was a U. I was immediately hooked. I have read all the first 7 books. At that time, I thought, I wish I were the author. I never thought that my words would come true. Chapter 099 Amazing Speed of Making Money. Seeing this, Shen Yu gently scratched her little nose. He smiled and said, Why didn't you ask me then? Luo Zhi frowned slightly and said unhappily. You were already married to Lin Feiwan at that time, how could I have the nerve to disturb you? Shen Yu touched his nose awkwardly and didn't respond to the conversation. About half an hour later, Xiaoqi called again. Tell Shen Yu to come at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. A new book launch event was held at the Xinhua bookstore in Capitalan Plaza in Shanghai. Shen Yu agreed without any hesitation. He said that he would definitely be there on time. After hanging up the phone, the two of them were quiet for less than 10 minutes when the cell phone rang again. Shen Yu picked up the phone helplessly. After seeing that it was Huang Ming calling, he immediately pressed the answer button. As soon as the call was connected, Huang Ming's hearty laughter came over. Old Shen, you've made a ton of money this time. Your songs are really a cash cow. Shen Yu was stunned when he heard this, his face was full of confusion. After he posted the songs he recorded on NetEase yesterday, he stopped paying attention to it, and now he doesn't know the specific data of these songs. Seeing that Shen Yu did not answer for a long time, Huang Ming could not help but be suspicious. Old Shen, you kid, don't you think you haven't paid attention to those songs of yours? When Shen Yu heard that he had been discovered, he smiled awkwardly and said, After releasing those songs last night, I haven't paid attention to it anymore. I don't know what the data is now. Huang Ming felt a toothache when he heard this. If he had a song of this quality, even just one, he would want to be in front of the screen every minute to observe the data. Unlike Shen Yu, he doesn't care at all and just lets it go once it's released. When Huang Ming thought of this, his excitement suddenly disappeared. He immediately said, You can see for yourself, I'm hanging up now. I'm asking for trouble by calling you. No, don't hang up yet, I have something else to do. Hearing Huang Ming was about to hang up the phone, Shen Yu hurriedly stopped him. He had originally planned to contact Huang Ming, and this was just the right time to inform him directly of the matter. Old Huang, I have already contacted the filming team and the theater. When will you come to Shanghai? Huang Ming was a little surprised when he heard this. You really invited me. I thought you were just a show. Stop talking nonsense. Do you want to shoot it or not? If you don't want to shoot it, I will contact someone else. No, I'll just shoot it. Your song Kai Ling is the pioneering work of the opera music genre. I'm lucky to be able to participate in this MV. Then the two of them discussed the time and then hung up the phone. Huang Ming's phone call was like a fuse. Mengde, Ji Shuyi, Zhu Ji, Wan Mingzhe and others also called to congratulate him. Shen Yu also patiently talked to them and thanked them for their congratulations. After making all these phone calls, my throat was so dry that it felt like it was smoking. Luo Zhi quickly handed over the water that had been prepared on the table, which solved Shen Yu's urgent problem. After dealing with these people, Shen Yu then opened NetEase music platform. But the data behind these songs made me a little confused for a while. After seeing this, Luo Zhi couldn't help but exclaimed. His mouth was open so wide that an egg could almost fit in it. I saw on NetEase music page all 5 of Shen Yu's songs, without exception. Within a day, all of them were on the list of new songs of this month. Ranked 7th is his Blue Lotus, with 16321 for 62 listens and 1235 for 523 downloads. 9th, Kai Ling, Shen Yu, listen 13316 for 66, download 1128 for 523. 11th, The Wind Rises, Shen Yu, listen 1241 for 599, download 928 for 467. 17th, The Color of Youth, Shen Yu, listen 10921 for 59, download 808 for 675. Chapter 21, Window, Shen Yu, listen on 1021 for 354, download on 788 for 786. Every song has been listened to more than 10 million times. The number of downloads, at least, has reached several million. You know, Shen Yu didn't sign a contract with NetEase. NetEase does not have the copyright to Shen Yu's songs. So if the audience wants to download these songs of Shen Yu, they can only buy them with real money. A song is worth $1. This means that the song with the lowest download volume earned Shen Yu millions in one day. The song that earned the most earned Shen Yu more than 10 million. Although some of the revenue will be shared with NetEase later, it is still a very impressive amount. No wonder Huang Ming and his people called to congratulate me. This is too profitable. Even a money printing machine may not make money this fast. It's almost the end of August now. Shen Yu's data is only from the first day. These new songs, which have been released for more than 20 days, have been rubbed to the ground. And the momentum is very strong. The data will continue to grow every second. Neither Luo Zhi nor Shen Yu downloaded Weibo. Of course I don't know, this matter has already spread completely on Weibo. It has occupied several hot searches. Shock. Shen Yu's new song was downloaded over 10 million times within one day of release. The pure enjoyment version of Shen Yu's songs is available on NetEase. Counting how much money Shen Yu actually made. Shen Yu's 5 songs surpassed 1 million on the first day. Many outdated celebrities want to stir up some scandals so that the audience won't forget them. After seeing the situation in the live broadcast room, he wisely postponed his plan. In his heart, he secretly cursed Shen Yu. Obviously, he no longer appears in the live broadcast. It can still stir up so much trouble and cause such a big sensation. Seeing Shen Yu release all 5 of his songs on NetEase music platform. And after it caused such a big response. Crying Dog and Penguin, both music giants, could no longer sit still. An emergency meeting was held regarding Shen Yu's issue. After intense discussions, it was finally decided to let the company. The director of the music copyright department personally contacted Shen Yu. We will try our best to obtain the copyrights of these songs, or at least get the exclusive broadcasting rights. At the same time, the headquarters of NetEase music platform. A group of executives were also holding an emergency meeting to discuss how to respond. Shen Yu is now like Tang Monk's flesh. Just a bite can get huge traffic. Music platforms of the same level as them, such as Penguin and Crying Dog. They will definitely try their best to recruit Shen Yu to their platform at all costs. This is already the norm between platforms. But it is obvious that NetEase has no intention of letting them succeed this time. Chapter 100, Filament enters the Magic City. Early the next morning. As soon as Shen Yu opened the door, I saw that Jinyue was still the same as yesterday. Standing outside the door with breakfast in hand. After Shen Yu opened the door, he walked straight in. Seeing this, Shen Yu said with a puzzled look. Why did you get up so early these 2 days? After Jinyue returned home yesterday, she was filled with resentment. She never expected that. In just one night, Luo Zhi actually seized the opportunity and rose to the top. I didn't even have a chance to react. I didn't sleep well last night. After hearing Shen Yu's question, he rolled his eyes and said, I went to bed early these 2 days. Early to bed and early to rise are good for my health. Shen Yu immediately nodded and replied. That's right. God invented light, so don't quarrel with him. Jinyue, who was originally a little depressed. Hearing Shen Yu's words, he burst out laughing. Seeing this, Shen Yu smiled and said, You look very pretty when you smile. Smile more in the future. So I went out to go for a morning run. Seeing this, Jinyue quickly called him and said, Hey, Shen Yu, tell me your home password. Shen Yu was puzzled when he heard this, and looked at Jinyue in confusion. Why should I tell you the password of my house? I can't stand at your door every morning waiting for you to open it. If Luo Zhi and I weren't close, I wouldn't come. Do you think I want to come? Jinyue never thought twice before telling a lie. Even though his heart was about to jump out of his chest, his face remained expressionless. Shen Yu looked at her suspiciously. How come he didn't realize that she and Luo Zhi had a good relationship? But then I thought about it, she was still whispering something with Luo Zhi yesterday, so I guess they have a pretty good relationship. Besides, it's not appropriate to have her stand at the door every morning. I told her the password of the door, then went downstairs to start my morning run. After Jinyue watched Shen Yu leave. He sat on the sofa and gasped for breath, his chest heaving. Just now he was afraid that Shen Yu would see through her little thoughts. I almost couldn't stand. Fortunately, Shen Yu did not doubt it. When I thought about getting the password to Shen Yu's house, the smile on her face suddenly became uncontrollable, and this was another big step towards successfully poaching someone. After adjusting your mindset, she then stood up and knocked on Luo Zhi's door. Not long after, Luo Zhi, who was wearing pajamas and had her hair casually draped behind her. Then he rubbed his eyes and walked out. After seeing Jinyue, he immediately smiled and said, "You're here again, Jinyue." Jinyue looked at Luo Zhi, who was smiling, and suddenly became furious. She looked at Luo Zhi and said, "Just wait, as long as the hoe digs well, the wall will fall down one day. Go wash up quickly, I brought breakfast." Then he turned around and came to the dining table. When Luo Zhi saw Jinyue's appearance, she immediately smiled. Although this girl looks strong and will not give up until she achieves her goal. But like her, in love. Both of them are complete novices who can only say a few harsh words. Luo Zhi shook her head and stopped thinking about these messy things. Then he went into the bathroom, washed up, and had breakfast with Jinyue. An hour later, Shen Yu came back sweating all over. After taking a shower in the bathroom, then he picked up the breakfast that had already gotten cold on the table and swallowed it in big gulps. Today's Jinyue. She did not leave after dinner. She had nothing else to do today, so she sat on the sofa and chatted with Luo Zhi. Jinyue was originally a rather active person, and after chatting for a while, she could no longer sit still. She looked at Luo Zhi and asked with a smile, "Luo Zhi, do you have any plans for today? How about we go to the zoo together?" Luo Zhi shook her head and said, "There is no time today. Shen Yu has to attend the sales conference this afternoon." Release conference? Is it for the release of those songs? They don't even have enough material to complete an album, so why are they holding a release conference so suddenly? Luo Zhi knew she had misunderstood the first day and quickly explained. "It's not a song release conference, it's a new book release conference." New book? You said Shen Yu wrote a new book and is going to hold a book launch party today. After hearing Luo Zhi's words, Jinyue's eyes suddenly opened wide and her mouth slightly opened. Incredibly confirmed again and again. Luo Zhi nodded and continued. "Yes, he wrote a book called Ghost Blows Out the Light, and now it's finished, so he's holding a sales conference." Ghost Blows Out the Light. When Jinyue heard the title of this book, her voice suddenly rose an octave. Seeing this, Luo Zhi smiled and said, "Why, have you heard of this book?" Jinyue rolled her eyes at Luo Zhi and said unhappily, "It's the pioneering work of the tomb raiding genre and one of the few good books in recent years. How could I not have heard of it? Several directors I worked with have said more than once that they want to contact the author of Ghost Blows Out the Light and buy the film and television adaptation rights of Ghost Blows Out the Light. Unfortunately, the author is not willing to sell the copyright at all, and there is no room for negotiation. I didn't expect that it was Shen Yu's book." As she spoke, she unconsciously looked at Shen Yu, who was sitting at the dining table eating. I sighed in my heart. She had no idea how much more capable this guy was. Shen Yu is like a treasure. Every time I thought this was all there was to him, I discovered that this was just the tip of the iceberg. After learning that the two of them were going to attend a new product launch event in the afternoon, Jinyue immediately proposed. "I'll go with you guys this afternoon. I've never been to a new book launch before." Luo Zhi pursed her lips and pointed at Shen Yu, who was not far away. "Go ask him." "Asking me won't work." Jinyue rolled her eyes at her, ran to Shen Yu and said directly, Shen Yu, when you go to the new book launch this afternoon, take me with you. Shen Yu glanced at her, thought for a moment, and then said with a smile. Okay, Luo Zhi and I don't have any means of transportation, so you can drive us there this afternoon. Jinyue did not refuse but agreed with a smile. What happened to the driver? She was already very satisfied that Shen Yu agreed to take her there. At the same time, at the airport, high-speed rail station and other transportation hubs in Shanghai, a large number of tourists from other places appeared. Most of them are young people in their 20s. It is standard for them to carry a school bag on their backs. They all held a book in their hands. They all came from different places and didn't know each other before. But after seeing the same book in the other person's hand, there was no sense of strangeness at all, and we started chatting enthusiastically instead. At the exit of each station, there are some organizers. They just put up a banner. Free pickup and drop off for filaments coming to Shanghai. Behind them were vehicles with Shanghai license plates. Chapter 101 Fear of Changing Clothes. And these foreign tourists holding books in their hands. I wasn't surprised by this, as if I had expected it. I walked straight to them and lined up consciously. 4 people drove in a car in a very orderly manner towards Capitaland Plaza. In fact, yesterday afternoon, after Shen Yu agreed to attend the book launch event for Ghost Blows Out the Light, the editor-in-chief immediately promoted this matter vigorously. Ghost Blows Out the Light is a phenomenal work. The number of fans he has accumulated is absolutely terrifying. The publisher released this news not long ago. The entire Weibo community was almost paralyzed because of this incident. Hot search number 1. Moreover, they changed their course in a very short period of time. # shock. Ghost Blows Out the Light author AU will appear at the new book launch #. After hearing the news, many filaments. They all opened the ticket purchasing software and bought the fastest tickets to Shanghai. Just to unveil the mystery of AU, the author of Ghost Blows Out the Light. This is his first public appearance. In order to show their identity, they agreed. All the fans hold a physical book of Ghost Blows Out the Light to make it easier for everyone to identify it. And the filaments of the Magic City. They spontaneously pick up and drop off filaments from all over the country at various stations for free. This is why we have such a shocking scene today. At this time, Capitaland Plaza has become the world of filaments. There were huge crowds of people, all gathered together. Holding the physical book of Ghost Blows Out the Light in hand, they shared their favorite plots. Now there are many media outlets that are interested in the news. They set up cameras and were randomly interviewing the filaments that came from afar. And this was only 9 o'clock in the morning. At this time, at Shen Yu's home, Luo Zhi and Jinyue took all of Shen Yu's clothes. He took them all out and tried them on Shen Yu. If he thought it was suitable, he would urge Shen Yu to change it and see the effect. The source of all this. Just because of Luo Zhi's subsequent question. After Shen Yu finished his meal, he also sat on the sofa. Luo Zhi suddenly had an idea and looked at Shen Yu and said, "Ayu, have you prepared your clothes for the new book launch this afternoon?" Shen Yu looked down at the white short-sleeved shirt on his body. And big black shorts, a little puzzled. "Why, is my outfit not good?" "I think it's pretty good. Black and white match, it goes with everything. You can't go wrong wearing it." Luo Zhi and Jinyue heard this. His brows were suddenly twisted into a knot. Luo Zhi was even more glad that she had mentioned it on a whim just now. Otherwise, no one would know that Shen Yu was planning to wear this outfit to attend the new book launch. Afterwards, Luo Zhi and the other person looked at each other. Then he went to Shen Yu's room and took out all the clothes in his closet. Tried them one by one on his body. Shen Yu was originally in a good mood. Instantly a mask of pain appeared on his face. He didn't think there was anything wrong with the clothes he was wearing. But Luo Zhi and the other two just looked down on it. He tried on several sets of clothes, but they were all rejected by the two. Jinyue even planned to drive and take Shen Yu to the mall to buy one. Watching the two people's increasingly outrageous actions, Shen Yu quickly said that he would cooperate well and there was no need to go to the mall. At last, Luo Zhi and Jinyue can only pick the best among the dwarfs. They chose a set of clothes that they liked the most to wear to the new book launch party in the afternoon. After selecting, Luo Zhi and Jinyue sat on the sofa in sync. Luo Zhi sighed and said, It seems I will have to pick out more suitable clothes for you in the future. Luo Zhi beside her also nodded and said. That's right. Your clothes are too casual. They are not quite appropriate for a formal occasion like today. Shen Yu didn't dare to say a word of rebuttal at this moment. He was afraid that these two women would drag him to the nearby shopping mall in the next second. He is really scared now. Girls are simply devils in this regard. In this half hour, he changed no less than 10 sets of clothes. These two people were still not very satisfied. After lunch, Jinyue drove Shen Yu and Luo Zhi to Capitaland Mall. At this time, in the Xinhua bookstore in Capitaland Plaza, Shen Yu's editor Xiao Qi was anxiously contacting security personnel. They had already guessed that there would be a lot of fans present today. But I still underestimated the influence of the IP of Ghost blowing the light. The entrance of Xinhua bookstore is now surrounded by crowds of people. Therefore, we had to temporarily and urgently add some more security personnel to ensure order on the scene and the author's safety. Two women who covered themselves up very tightly, wearing masks and hats. At this time, we also arrived at Capitaland Plaza. Although her face was covered, her beautiful figure was. It still attracted the attention of passers-by around. Especially the one on the right, who is half a head shorter than his companion. But that pair of magnificent things is extremely eye-catching. Countless male passers-by were amazed. Female passers-by were full of jealousy, as she really had a great figure. These two are not others. They were Lin Feiwan and Zhu Zhi, two good sisters. Lin Feiwan frowned slightly when he saw the crowded Capitaland Mall. I didn't hear there was an event at Capitaland Mall today. Why don't we go somewhere else? Zhu Zhi was very excited. She is always lively, so it doesn't matter if you can't meet her. If you encounter this, you will always feel uncomfortable if you don't go and take a look. He shook his head and said. Let's go take a look first. I want to see what activities are being held here. Then I randomly found a female passerby nearby and started a conversation. Beautiful lady, may I ask, what kind of event is being held at Capitaland Plaza today? Why are there so many people? This woman was also secretly looking at Zhu Zhi's assets. I didn't expect that she would actually talk to me. He was stunned for a moment, then his cheeks turned slightly red when he realized what was happening, and he quickly explained. Oh, the author of Ghost Blows Out the Light will be at the new book launch event at 3 p.m., and we are all fans from all over the place. Zhu Zhi's eyes suddenly lit up when he heard this. After she thanked him quickly, she returned to Lin Feiwan's side. He said excitedly. Wanwan, the author of Ghost Blows Out the Light is going to hold a new book launch event today. Let's go and take a look later. I'm a big fan of this novel. This novel is so wonderfully written, and of course it's also very thrilling. When I was watching Stealing the Country, I always curled up in bed to read it. I always felt like someone was trying to harm me. Lin Feiwan frowned slightly when he heard this. Somewhat surprised, the dense crowd not far away. This number of fans is almost the same as if I held a fan meeting myself. Chapter 102 arriving at the site and changing the venue of the sales event. Lin Feiwan looked at Shen Yu with some doubt and said. Zhu Zhi, is writing novels so popular now? This scene was beyond Lin Feiwan's expectations. Thinking of what Shen Yu said before that he also wrote novels, she suddenly became a little shaken. She was thinking secretly in her heart, could it be that she had misunderstood Shen Yu at the beginning? Zhu Zhi heard this, smiled and shook his head. How is it possible? Ghost Blows Out the Light is a phenomenal novel. There are not many novels that can stand on equal footing with it. Besides, this is the author's first appearance, so it has this effect. For an average person to have 1/5 of this, he would already be considered a god-level author. After hearing Zhu Zhi's explanation, Lin Feiwan then breathed a sigh of relief and ruthlessly discarded the unrealistic fantasy in his heart. After Shen Yu and the other two drove to the underground parking lot of Capitaland Plaza, Xiao Qi had already arrived with several security personnel. The moment I saw Shen Yu, Xiao Qi felt as if he had received an electric shock, and stood there in a daze. It was Shen Yu who waved to her first, and she finally reacted and came up to him excitedly, her face full of excitement. She is a loyal viewer of Lovers and a die-hard fan of Shen Yu. She almost didn't miss any scene of Shen Yu. She is now familiar with Shen Yu's songs. His songs were playing on my headphones this morning. She looked at Shen Yu, her voice trembling slightly. Are you Shen Yu, the Shen Yu of the beloved lover? Shen Yu smiled and stretched out his hand. Hello, Editor Xiaoqi, I am Shen Yu from Heart-Stirring Lovers, and also a Yu, the author of Ghost Blows Out the Light. After Xiaoqi heard what Shen Yu said, his mind went blank. He mechanically stretched out his hand to shake hands with Shen Yu, his thoughts already wandering. She never thought of it. My favorite celebrity in the entertainment industry and my favorite author are actually the same person. Originally, she was so happy that she couldn't sleep all night because she could see the author of Ghost Blows Out the Light today. As a result, she had received such a big surprise. She almost fainted with joy. Xiaoqi, Xiaoqi. She faintly heard someone calling her, and then she woke up slowly. Seeing Shen Yu and Luo Zhi, Jinyue and others looking at him. But her hand still held Shen Yu's hand tightly, and her face was suddenly covered with red clouds. She quickly let go of her hand and apologized. I'm sorry Shen Yu, I'm just too excited. Shen Yu naturally didn't lose his temper, he smiled and said it was okay. Xiaoqi regained his composure. After shaking hands with Jinyue, he looked at Luo Zhi with a smile on his face and said, Luo Zhi, I am the loyal guardian of the healing team. Come on, you will definitely succeed. It's been 3 days since the show ended. Luo Zhi also knew that this so-called healing combination was the CP name of herself and Shen Yu. He immediately smiled and looked at Xiaoqi with a much kinder look. On the contrary, Jinyue pouted her lips. I thought to myself that I must perform well in the next episode and try to dig out Luo Zhi's girlfriend. She has even thought of a name for the CP, which is called the goldfish combination. After a round of greetings, Xiaoqi took Shen Yu and the other two through a special passage and arrived at the Xinhua bookstore. After arriving at the lounge on the second floor of the bookstore, Luo Zhi and Jinyue looked through their window and saw the huge crowd below. They were dumbfounded. Why are there so many people here? Even Shen Yu himself was a little confused. He knows the value of the novel Ghost Blows Out the Light. But he only announced yesterday that he would attend. So I thought it would be good to have 2,000 people here today. But looking at the current situation, there are already 7,000 to 8,000 people below. And it seems to be increasing. Seeing this, Shen Yu quickly looked at Xiaoqi beside him and said, Are you sure Xinhua bookstore can accommodate so many people? Xiaoqi shook his head and smiled bitterly. It's too big to accommodate. In fact, this Xinhua bookstore can only accommodate 1,000 people at most. If there are more, it will be crowded. We didn't expect so many book lovers to come today. We really can't accommodate them. Shen Yu frowned upon seeing this. He lowered his head and began to think. These fans are all loyal fans who came directly from all over the world after learning that I would attend. Most of them won't even have the chance to see me. He really felt bad about it. After a while, he looked up at Xiaoqi and said, How many people can this large square below accommodate? Capitaland Plaza is about 7,000 square meters, about the same size as a football field. Theoretically, it can accommodate about 20,000 people. Shen Yu's eyes suddenly lit up. Can you talk to the organizer and change the venue of the new book launch event? No longer in the Xinhua bookstore. It's too small. Let's hold it in the square in front. Xiaoqi was also delighted when he heard this. She is also a filament, so she naturally knows what the filaments below are thinking. But as a staff member, she couldn't change anything. Now that Shen Yu took the initiative to bring it up, she didn't even say a word of persuasion, and directly said, Teacher Shen, please wait a moment. I will go and ask our relevant person in charge. Then he stood up and walked aside, took out his cell phone and made an emergency call. A few minutes later, she came over with a smile and said, Teacher Shen, our leader has already accepted your invitation. We will rearrange the place now. Don't worry, it will be completed before 3 o'clock. Shen Yu heard this and said with a smile, It's okay. It was my last-minute request in the first place. It's okay to postpone the release date. Xiaoqi nodded and continued. Teacher Shen, we have invited 3 well-known people in the industry to come to your launch event. They have already arrived at Xinhua bookstore. Do you want to meet them now? Generally speaking, a new book launch cannot be held with only the author. We will also invite some friends from the industry, writers, storytellers, etc. to participate as guests. However, Shen Yu did not know any colleagues. A few days ago, I unexpectedly received a call from Mr. Fong Bingwen. But their relationship wasn't so good that he would travel thousands of miles to Shanghai to be a guest at his new book launch. So when Xiaoqi called, Shen Yu let them make their own arrangements. Now that they have come, there is no reason not to leave. He smiled and said, "Of course I have to meet with several teachers in advance. I also have to thank them for their support. Okay, I'll bring a few teachers to your lounge now." Having said that, he turned around, opened the door and walked out. Chapter 103 New Book Launch. Not long after, Xiaoqi left and came back. At the same time, 3 men who looked to be in their 40s or 50s also came in. Seeing this, Shen Yu quickly stood up and came forward. Xiaoqi stood in front. He first introduced Shen Yu with a smile. "3 teachers, this is Mr. Shen Yu, the author of Ghost Blows Out the Light." Then he introduced 3 teachers who would assist Shen Yu. "Teacher Shen, this is Director Li Ping of the Magic City Cultural Bureau, this is Professor Zhang Yun of the Department of Literature at Magic City University, and this is Mr. Zhao Gang, a first-class writer of the Chinese Writers Association." After the introduction, Shen Yu took the initiative to step forward and shake hands. Li Ping and Zhang Yun had never expected that. The author of Ghost Blows Out the Light is so young. They thought he was an author of about their age who had accumulated a lot of experience and was about to make a breakthrough. He immediately shook hands with Shen Yu enthusiastically. He laughed and sighed, saying that the young are really to be feared. Shen Yu was able to write such influential works at such a young age. Zhao Gang, who was standing by, saw Shen Yu as if he were his prey. Since the moment she came in, her eyes have never left him. Shen Yu glanced at him inadvertently, and his heart couldn't help but be a little nervous. I didn't seem to know him. When he saw me, it was like a wolf seeing a lamb. Fortunately, he did not let Shen Yu guess blindly. When the two shook hands, they took the initiative to get straight to the point. "Shen Yu, I know you. Yesterday, our Yangjing Writers Association held a meeting to discuss you. President Fong Bingwen praised you highly. Your song Peach Blossom Cottage was really well written, and your thin gold style of calligraphy really makes me feel ashamed. I have wasted so many years." Seeing this, Shen Yu quickly said modestly, "Teacher Zhao, you are too kind. I am just a little bit influenced by the new era and new ideas. The conciseness and regularity of my writing are still far inferior to those of you who have been deeply engaged in literature for decades." Shen Yu's modesty and easygoing attitude made Zhao Gang smile even brighter. He was afraid that Shen Yu was arrogant because of his talent. "After all, I was young and frivolous. Having achieved so much at such a young age, it is understandable that he is a little complacent. But I never expected that Shen Yu would be so humble." This made them feel relieved. Luo Zhi and Jinyue simply greeted them. Shen Yu sat down with the 3 of them and chatted about some literary topics. Original. The 3 teachers were still worried about Shen Yu's youth. "Because my experience and knowledge are not deep enough, I deliberately took care of him." As the conversation deepened, they were surprised to find that Shen Yu was like a bottomless pit. The breadth and depth of knowledge is incredible. No matter what topic they talked about, Shen Yu could always keep up with the pace. And they can express their own opinions. Some opinions even made them feel touched. Li Ping and Zhang Yun, who had originally looked down on Shen Yu because of his age. I immediately adjusted my mindset. It was not by chance that I came across Shen Yu's Ghost Blows Out the Light. But there is really something in mind. By the end of the conversation, Shen Yu had firmly taken the main seat and began to guide the conversation among several teachers. Luo Zhi and Jinyue were the audience. They looked at each other and saw the horror in each other's eyes. They also didn't expect that Shen Yu's literary attainments were so profound. When compared with these 3 teachers who have been famous for a long time, this is more intuitively demonstrated. The 3 of them chatted for more than an hour. Xiaoqi then reopened the door and walked in. The sound of the door opening immediately affected the conversation among several people. Zhao Gang and the other 2 immediately showed a trace of displeasure on their faces. They were talking with Shen Yu about some writing topics. It was more like writing than talking. Now that Xiaoqi opened the door and interrupted them, how could they have a good face? After seeing that it was Xiaoqi, Shen Yu smiled and took the initiative to speak. "What's wrong, Xiaoqi?" "Mr. Shen, the new book launch has been arranged. Do you want to?" Upon hearing this, Shen Yu looked at the watch on his wrist. Somewhat embarrassedly. "Oh, I didn't even notice the time. It's already 3 o'clock. Teachers, why don't we hold the new book launch party first? Zhao Gang and the other two immediately showed a trace of embarrassment on their faces when they heard this. Just now they were in a hurry to discuss writing, but forgot the purpose of their coming here today. I almost missed the important thing. They immediately stood up and said with a smile. Yes, Shen Yu is right. We can't miss the important things. After that, the group stood up and walked towards the square. At this time, the filaments present in the square already knew that. It was the author AU who found out that the venue was too small to accommodate them. So we deliberately changed the venue to Capitaland Plaza. My love for the author has reached a new level. They all praised that the author was indeed their favorite and they had not chosen the wrong person. Lin Feiwan and Zhu Zhi were also mixed in the crowd at this time. And it is still very advanced. In their hands, one of them was holding a copy of the 8th volume of Ghost Blows Out the Light that they had just bought. Actually, Lin Feiwan was going to leave. But Zhu Zhi requested again and again, so he kept her. If Zhu Zhi didn't know that his favorite author would show up today, it would be fine. Now that I know, and will appear in front of her soon. She said she didn't want to leave at all. Lin Feiwan had no choice but to promise her that he would leave immediately after watching it, and Zhu Zhi also agreed with a smile. Just then. Suddenly, from the crowd near the Xinhua bookstore, there were bursts of wows. It immediately attracted everyone's attention. Everyone stood on tiptoe and stretched their heads to look in that direction. Then they saw 20 or 30 security guards protecting Shen Yu and his group, walking towards the small temporary platform in the middle of the square. Wherever I went, I could hear the croaking of frogs and noisy discussions. Zhu Zhi and Luo Zhi were in the center of the platform at this time. So when Shen Yu and others came on stage, the two of them were able to see their faces clearly. After seeing Shen Yu, Luo Zhi and Jinyue also take their seats on the stage. The two of them froze in place for a moment, puzzled. When Zhu Zhi saw Shen Yu, the smile on his face suddenly became even wider. A trace of panic suddenly flashed across Lin Feiwan's eyes. There was an uproar in his heart. Could it be that his previous guess was true? But the next second, this guess was thrown out of his mind again. Impossible, absolutely impossible. How could Shen Yu be the author of Ghost Blows Out the Light? The author who can write Ghost Blows Out the Light should be like the three middle-aged men in the front. At first glance, you can tell that he is a scholarly writer with a wealth of knowledge. Chapter 10 for New Book Release Conference. After a few people sat down, Xiaoqi then stepped forward with the microphone in hand and began to read out his opening remarks. She is not only an editor today, but also the host of the launch event. Thank you all for taking the trouble to come and participate. After delivering a carefully prepared opening speech without a script, this immediately aroused warm applause from the filaments present. Next, please let me introduce today's guests to everyone. Xiaoqi started to introduce the guests from left to right. Soon the three guests who were there to help out were introduced. When it was Shen Yu's turn, Xiaoqi paused for a moment before speaking. I believe many of you here are familiar with the person I'm introducing next. Yes, he is Shen Yu, one of the male guests of Heartthrob Lovers. Next to him are the piano talent Luo Zhi and the film queen Jinyue. As soon as the words fell, the whole audience burst into cheers. It has to be said that Shen Yu's current popularity is unique in the entertainment industry. Originally, he could have killed everyone with his foul face. Coupled with this peerless talent, it really is a dimensional strike in the domestic entertainment industry, killing everyone indiscriminately. Even in today's cultural circle, he can still gain a foothold just by relying on the song Peach Blossom Cottage. When the audience calmed down a bit, Xiaoqi continued. At the beginning, I only introduced myself as Xiaoqi. In fact, I am an editor, serving the exclusive editor of Yu, the author of Ghost Blows Out the Light. Next, I announced that Shen Yu is the author of Ghost Blows Out the Light, and his pen name is Yu. Let us warmly welcome him. After saying this, he was the first to applaud. The filaments in the audience were stunned for a few seconds after hearing this. Then there was thunderous applause, mixed with screams and cheers from many girls. The scene reached its climax in an instant. None of these fans had expected that their favorite author of Ghost Blows Out the Light was actually Shen Yu. They had previously thought that he was a fat man in his 30s or 40s. They are embarrassed to show up, and that's why they are reluctant to announce it. They even agreed that after seeing Yu today, they would not attack his appearance. In the end, they really worried for nothing. Shen Yu's appearance is not inferior to anyone else in the world, let alone in China. He is definitely a handsome guy. After hearing Xiao Qi's announcement, Lin Feiwan's heart finally died, and his body kept swaying from side to side, as if he was drunk. My heart was in a mess in an instant, and my head was buzzing. These were all the things Shen Yu had said to her before, about how he made money by writing novels. There was even one time when Shen Yu put his own data in front of her. She just needs to take it and take a look. As a result, she was resentful and refused to take a look. Shen Yu raised his hand for a long time but received no response, so he gave up. When she thought that what Shen Yu said was true, she felt like the sky was falling. Zhu Ji, who was standing next to her, was the opposite of her. After Zhu Ji heard that Shen Yu was the author of Ghost Blows Out the Light, I was so excited that I almost jumped up. She completely forgot that she had a best friend who was divorced from Shen Yu. She cheered along with the other filaments around her. Her heartbeat quickened due to the shouting, and her face flushed. At this time, Shen Yu also took the microphone from the table. He stood up and greeted everyone, smiling and said, "Hello everyone, I am the author of Ghost Blows Out the Light, my name is Yu, thank you for liking my book." As soon as the words fell, the audience burst into applause again. Many media outlets have pointed all their guns and cannons at Shen Yu. I wanted to take out my phone to take pictures. As a journalist with many years of experience in the industry, they know clearly that the fact that Shen Yu is the author of Ghost Blows Out the Light, there is a huge amount of traffic hidden behind it. Everyone was not daring to be careless, their eyes were glowing green. In their eyes, Shen Yu is now a piece of glowing Tang monk's flesh. The process of a new book launch is actually very simple. It is nothing more than some introduction of the author, display of new books, questions from fans and media, and book signing. A general sales conference lasts about 1 or 2 hours. But Shen Yu is a little special. On the one hand, Ghost Blows Out the Light was so popular that nearly 10,000 people came to the scene. Another reason is his own fame. When it was time to interact with the book fans in the audience and ask questions, in a flash, thousands of people raised their hands at the same time. The scene was extremely spectacular. Luo Zhi and others were on the stage, looking at the expectant eyes of the audience. They were also deeply shocked, as they had never seen such a scene before. But after Shen Yu saw this scene, my whole body feels numb. This year's book fans are so enthusiastic. If they continue like this, there's no end date for today's new book launch. Shen Yu didn't have any good solution. First, he chose a woman at the front of the crowd who was holding her hands high and looked quite excited. She smiled and said, "What do you want to ask?" When the woman saw that Shen Yu had chosen her, she was so excited that she almost jumped up. When the people around her saw it, there was an expression of great envy on their faces. After taking the microphone handed over by the staff, a trembling voice sounded. "Shen Yu, I am your loyal fan. I have read all the first 7 parts of Ghost Blows Out the Light." Before he finished speaking, there was a sound not far away. "I've read them all." "Me too." Shen Yu smiled and bowed slightly to thank everyone, then extended his hand to signal the woman to continue speaking. The woman looked at Shen Yu gratefully and continued. "Actually, I want to know whether Hu Bei and Shirley Yang ended up together." As soon as he finished speaking, countless filaments below looked at Shen Yu expectantly. In the novel Ghost Blows Out the Light, in addition to the various ups and downs and dangerous adventure segments, the relationship between Hu Bei and Shirley Yang is also a very important storyline. Shen Yu heard this and looked at the woman who asked the question with a smile. Then he picked up the last volume of Ghost Blows Out the Light on his desk and said, "The answer you want is in this book. I won't spoil it. The mystery is most exciting when you figure it out yourself." Hearing this, the woman nodded immediately and hummed heavily. "Although I didn't get the answer I wanted, but I also understand that the relationship between the two will be explained in the latest part." After hearing Shen Yu's answer, many fans who like the love story between Hu Bei and Shirley Yang, they are also looking forward to the newly released 8th part of Ghost Blows Out the Light. Chapter 105 New Book Release Part 2. After answering, the filaments in the audience raised their hands again. Shen Yu randomly picked a male book fan this time. After getting the microphone, the filament looked at Shen Yu with a bit more fanaticism on his face. Shen Yu, are these stories you wrote all stories you have personally experienced or heard? Shen Yu was stunned for a moment when he heard this. He looked at the man and spread his hands, and this time he said, "If this really happened in person, do you think I would still be sitting here, chatting with you all? I should be inside, operating the sewing machine by now. You might even be able to buy the scarf I knitted." Shen Yu's humor immediately made the book fans present burst into laughter. Besides, what Shen Yu said was not wrong. If this really happened, how could he still sit here peacefully? I was invited to have tea a long time ago. As time goes by, the book fans in the audience were no longer as nervous as they were at the beginning. He became relaxed and his true nature came out. At the beginning, the topics discussed were all related to the book Ghost Blows Out the Light. Or it could be Shen Yu's creative process. Afterwards, everything changed. The focus is no longer on Ghost Blows Out the Light, but on Shen Yu himself. Many female fans openly asked about Shen Yu's relationship problems. I want to know which one Shen Yu likes. There were even several tall and good-looking women who volunteered. Let Shen Yu consider them. The atmosphere in the venue immediately became more heated. This interaction lasted for more than an hour before it stopped. Then, 3 guests also shared with the book fans present their views on the book Ghost Blows Out the Light and their favorite plots. The 3 of them are indeed masters who have been well versed in the field of literature for many years. The audience was impressed by his insights. After accepting interviews from media friends, the entire new book launch event only has one last step left: the signing session. When Shen Yu thought about this part, his head started to hurt. If I were to sign for all the book lovers in the audience, I would have to give up my hands. However, Xiao Qi, who was acting as their host at the moment, had already thought of a countermeasure. She came to Shen Yu's side quietly and said, "Teacher Shen, when we sign the autographs later, we can limit the number of signatures to the quota of 1,000 people." Shen Yu heard this and looked at the expectant book fans in the audience. Finally, he sighed and said, "Let's increase the number of places to 2,000. Everyone has taken the trouble to come here. 1,000 is really a little too few. 2,000 is just right. If there are more, I may not be able to handle it." Upon hearing this, Xiao Qi looked at Shen Yu with admiration. Then he walked back to the stage. Looking at the book fans in the audience, he said loudly, "I believe everyone knows that there is one of the most important procedures in the new book release conference, and that is book signing. Teacher Shen Yu has just increased the number of book signings to 2,000. Now everyone should start lining up, starting with this girl." As he spoke, Xiao Qi pointed at the first female book fan who had interacted with Shen Yu before. The female book fan was immediately excited when she heard this. At the same time, almost all the book fans rushed to the back of the woman. Upon seeing this, Shen Yu shouted loudly, "Everyone queue up in a civilized manner and pay attention to safety." At the same time, Xiao Qi also dispatched all security personnel to maintain order. Soon, a long dragon of people appeared in front of Shen Yu. The female book lover at the front came up with the physical copy of Ghost Blows Out the Light. Shen Yu took out a pen and wrote his name on the title page in thin gold script. He smiled and handed it back to the woman with both hands, and said, "Thank you for liking this book." The woman heard this and said excitedly, "Thank you for writing such a good book. I hope you can keep up the good work in the future. We look forward to your new work. Also, I think Luo Zhi and you are a perfect match. I hope you can be together in the end." Without waiting for Shen Yu to reply, he turned around and walked down the platform from the other side. Seeing this, Shen Yu smiled and said nothing. At the beginning, Shen Yu was able to chat with the book fans who came on stage. As time went on, Shen Yu lost interest in talking. Only the mechanical signature remained. After a while, Shen Yu signed his name again. The moment I raised my head and handed it to the book lover. He froze in place for a moment, then smiled and said, "No wonder I didn't see you and Jinyue just now. It turns out you also went to queue up. You don't need to queue up. Can't I just go home and sign for you?" That's right, the book fan who came on stage was Luo Zhi, his girlfriend. Hearing Shen Yu's words, Luo Zhi shook her head and said, "It's different. This is your first book signing and I want to participate." Shen Yu thought about it for a moment. He took the book back and said with a smile, "Luo Zhi, let me give you a poem." After that, he picked up the pen and wrote 4 lines of poetry in thin gold script on the title page. and write in the signature. On August 25th of the Juchen year, Shen Yu presented Luo Zhi as a gift. After Luo Zhi got it, she didn't read the poem right away. Instead, she smiled sweetly at Shen Yu, turned around and sat back in her original seat. The next person to sign was no one else. It was Jinyue. This girl had just followed Luo Zhi and knew that Shen Yu had given Luo Zhi a poem. He immediately looked at Shen Yu expectantly. "Shen Yu, I also want a poem, otherwise I won't leave." Upon hearing this, Shen Yu glared at her helplessly. I had no choice but to pick up the pen and write another poem and hand it to her. Jinyue seemed not to notice Shen Yu's look. I was not affected at all, instead I was very happy. She picked up the book and returned to her seat. He began to look through the poems Shen Yu wrote to him. No matter how she got it, this is the poem Shen Yu gave her. Apart from Luo Zhi, no one else has this honor. Next. Shen Yu's signing journey did not have many twists and turns. The only thing that made him feel uncomfortable was that his right hand was visibly numb. I could feel a burning pain in my knuckles. Luo Zhi saw that he frowned from time to time, and there was a look of pity on his face. I wanted to stop Shen Yu from signing several times. But in the end I managed to hold it in. Because she understood that the reason why Shen Yu chose to sign 2,000 copies was, I don't want to disappoint these book fans who have come from all over the place. So even though she was heartbroken now, she couldn't speak to stop Shen Yu. She turned to look at Jinyue. He whispered a few words in her ear. Afterwards, Jinyue handed the book in her hand to Luo Zhi for temporary safekeeping. Then he ran out in a hurry with 2 security guards. Chapter 106 to Luo Zhi. After Shen Yu signed all 2,000 books. Both hands are numb. My knuckles were swollen like carrots in winter, red and thick. Seeing Luo Zhi felt like a knife was cutting my heart. Luo Zhi took the Voltaren cream that Jinyue had bought before. He carefully helped Shen Yu apply the medicine on the spot. After seeing this, the media present all had green lights in their eyes. The long guns and short guns in their hands were pointed at the 2 people again. I almost wanted to press the shutter of my camera until smoke came out. I was even more ecstatic in my heart, because this popular material came again. And in the filament under the stage, in an inconspicuous position. When Lin Feiwan saw Luo Zhi carefully applying the medicine to Shen Yu, his face suddenly turned pale. Clench your hands tightly. There was a surge of anger in my heart. It feels like I've been playing with toys for a long time, but now I'm tired of them and don't know where I threw them. But suddenly one day, it appeared in someone else's hands. I suddenly felt a huge sense of disappointment in my heart, and I wanted to go forward and snatch it back. Zhu Ji, who was beside her, looked at Luo Zhi on the stage with envy. At this moment, she really wished that the person sitting next to Shen Yu and helping him apply the medicine was herself. After the book signing session, those who got the autographs were all very excited. The filaments that didn't get the autographs had a hint of disappointment on their faces. But they didn't blame Shen Yu. Because they knew that Shen Yu had tried his best to satisfy them. Signed 2,000 books. Those fingers that could no longer bend were Shen Yu's best respect and explanation to them. Wait until Xiaoqi comes on stage. I am excited to announce that this new book launch has been successfully concluded. Most of the filaments did not leave, and just stood there quietly looking at Shen Yu. Shen Yu was very moved when he saw this. He whispered to Luo Zhi. Or I'll chat with you guys for a while. Luo Zhi rolled her eyes at him in annoyance. I couldn't help but sigh in my heart. This person really doesn't know how to take care of himself. There is no way, if I don't love my man, who will? Then he whispered. You've done well enough, can you let me do the rest? Shen Yu was stunned for a moment when he heard this, then he smiled and said. Okay, I'll leave it to you from now on. Luo Zhi heard this. He took the microphone from Shen Yu's desk, then looked at Shen Yu's fans and said. Dear book fans, you all know that Shen Yu's hands are swollen from signing books. But seeing your enthusiasm, he still wanted to chat with you for a while, but I stopped him because he was really upset right now. How about this? I see a piano at the entrance of the music store over there. I'll play a piano piece that Shen Yu has just written, and then everyone can leave in an orderly manner. Hearing Luo Zhi say this, the book fans in the audience naturally had no reason to disagree. After all, the new book launch is over. In fact, Shen Yu and others could just get up and leave. Therefore, the book fans were deeply moved and felt that they really did not like the wrong person. And the fans gradually changed from liking Shen Yu's books to liking Shen Yu as a person. Then, Luo Zhi stood up and walked straight to the nearby musical instrument store with Shen Yu, Jinyue and others. The owner of the piano store was also at the door of his store. After hearing Luo Zhi's words, I immediately asked the staff to place the store's microphone and speakers next to the piano, to ensure that Luo Zhi's piano music can be heard by the tens of thousands of people present. At this moment, the boss couldn't suppress the smile on his face, and his face was almost wrinkled from laughing. I secretly thought in my heart, this overwhelming wealth finally came to him. You know, Luo Zhi is the second best pianist in the country and can be considered a national treasure level artist. If we take one step forward, we will be able to leave a name in the international community. Plus Shen Yu, the golden IP. The two joined forces and played on their own piano. Wouldn't that mean his own music store would take off completely? This wave of traffic would be enough for him to make a fortune. When Luo Zhi and others arrived, the boss didn't put on airs at all, and was so active that he looked like a lackey. Before Luo Zhi could speak, he spoke first. Hello, Ms. Luo, the piano is ready, please feel free to use it. Luo Zhi nodded and thanked him. Then he sat on the chair in front of the piano. She didn't tune the piano. Since this piano can be placed at the entrance of the piano store, this means that there is definitely no problem with the pitch. Otherwise, there would be no need to open this music store. If word gets out, you'll be laughed at by your peers and no customers will come back. Luo Zhi closed her eyes, just like Shen Yu did last time, looking for the right state. There were people surrounding her not far away. But what was surprising was that so many people didn't make a sound. 2 minutes later, Luo Zhi opened her eyes, and her 10 slender fingers danced on the piano. In an instant, with the help of microphones and speakers, the moving melody reached the ears of everyone present. The faces of the audience around them suddenly showed an intoxicated look. They seemed to see a gentle and elegant woman. She also felt the pianist's deep and strong love for her. They could tell that this was a piano piece about love and longing. When Luo Zhi finished playing, most people are still intoxicated by the story depicted by the piano music. Shen Yu looked at Luo Zhi and nodded. Luo Zhi's piano level. We have indeed reached a bottleneck. There is only a thin layer of window paper left to become a piano master. And Shen Yu could feel it. Luo Zhi had already stepped half a foot in, and the remaining foot was not far away. After recording the piano piece that day, Luo Zhi asked him for the sheet music. Today was the first time she played this piano piece. The whole place was silent for 2 minutes. Only then did many people wake up from the singing and start clapping. The applause immediately woke up the audience around. After coming to their senses, they gave another round of enthusiastic applause. Luo Zhi stood up, bowed gently to everyone, and then said into their microphone, "Thank you, everyone. Please leave in an orderly manner and avoid crowding." Having said that, he planned to leave with Shen Yu, Jinyue and others. At this time, right in front of me, a woman suddenly came up. I don't know the name of this piano piece yet. He immediately shouted loudly, Luo Zhi, what is the name of this piano piece? When Luo Zhi heard this, a rare blush appeared on her face. She glanced at Shen Yu shyly, and when she saw that he didn't react, then he leaned over to the microphone and whispered, "The name of this piano piece is, to Luo Zhi." After saying that, he boldly took the initiative to pull up Shen Yu and Jinyue. Under the protection of the surrounding security personnel, he quickly walked away towards the Xinhua bookstore. Chapter 107. Why is this song familiar and unfamiliar? The audience around was stunned for 2 seconds. Then, as if a boiler had been overturned, the whole place suddenly began to boil. There were constant exclamations and discussions. The entire scene suddenly turned into a noisy, bustling city. At this time, many loyal fans of the healing group were around. It was like the new year, the excitement and joy on their faces could not be suppressed at all. They are fans of the perfect couple Shen Yu and Luo Zhi. It seems that they are really successful together, and this song dedicated to Luo Zhi is the best proof. But this is the way the world is. Some are happy, some are sad. Compared to the happiness of the fans of the healing group, Lin Feiwan and Zhu Ji seemed so out of place among them. Zhu Ji's face was full of envy and jealousy. She didn't expect that Luo Zhi had successfully won over Shen Yu after just a few days of not seeing each other. This made her feel very upset. She was planning to start pursuing Shen Yu madly in the next episode. Lin Feiwan, who was standing next to her, had an even more interesting expression on her face. Her rosy cheeks, which were covered by a mask, were now completely bloodless. A pair of eyes stared at the direction where Shen Yu and others left, full of disbelief. At this moment, huge waves were stirred in my heart. In her opinion, Shen Yu is her private property and cannot live without her. That day Luo Zhi appeared in his home. She still stubbornly believed that this was Shen Yu's way of getting her attention. I specially put on a play. She has seen many such childish tricks. And Luo Zhi's words just now. It was like a bolt of lightning, striking her head fiercely. Suddenly she understood. The Shen Yu today is no longer the person who loved herself more than he loved him 3 years ago. When I thought that I might really lose Shen Yu. She was visibly panicking. He immediately ran towards Shen Yu. When Juji saw what was wrong with her best friend, she quickly followed her. But there are too many people around. The two of them had not yet reached the entrance of Xinhua bookstore. Shen Yu and the other two had already said goodbye to Zhao Gang and the others, came to the parking lot through a special passage, and drove towards home. In the car, Jinyue looked at Luo Zhi, who was sitting in the passenger seat. He looked through the rearview mirror at Shen Yu, who was resting on the back of the chair. She had endured all this time. Now there are only 3 of them left, and he said coldly, "Luo Zhi, what's up with this piano piece?" Seeing Jinyue's serious face. While staring at the road ahead, I also glanced at myself from time to time. He suddenly burst out laughing. Seeing this, Jinyue frowned and scolded. "You're still laughing." Luo Zhi took a few deep breaths, suppressed her laughter, and then explained. "What's going on? It's a piano piece that Shen Yu wrote for me. Didn't I explain it clearly before? When did you write it? How come I don't know? You definitely didn't know that you weren't there that day when Shen Yu and I went to record a song together." As she spoke, Luo Zhi told the story of how the two of them were looked down upon by the instrument teachers. Then she and Shen Yu took turns to attack from a lower dimension. He told Jinyue everything without reservation. After Jinyue heard this, the anger on his face was hard to contain. "I have already cursed that piano man thousands of times in my heart. It was all because of that damn guy. That's why Luo Zhi got such a good piano piece for nothing." She now understands. Why did Shen Yu and Luo Zhi confirm their relationship so quickly? It must be related to this matter. When she thought of this, she wanted to kill the piano man. The more Jinyue thought about it, the more uncomfortable she felt. Looking at Shen Yu down from the rearview mirror. "Shen Yu, you've already written a piano piece for Luo Zhi, so please write a song for me. I've already contacted the filming team for you. This request isn't too much, is it?" Upon hearing this, Shen Yu nodded without thinking too much. "Really? When I need a filming team?" Jinyue contacted him without saying anything. He even paid the expenses himself. It is only natural that I give her a song. Thinking of this, he immediately said, "Sure. By the way, I haven't heard you sing yet. How about you sing a few lines a cappella? I'll tailor a song for you based on your voice." When Jinyue heard Shen Yu agreed, her face suddenly showed some joy. After thinking for a while, he smiled and said, "Then I will sing a few lines of the song The Color of Youth that you wrote." As she spoke, she cleared her throat and began to show off her singing voice. "Flowers shed tears and wither, time flies and quietly wipes away the fragrance, we are no longer." Jinyue opened her voice confidently. After Shen Yu and Luo Zhi heard this voice, his expectant look suddenly fell and his brows furrowed. It is said that when God closes a door, he will certainly open a window. Shen Yu now knew which door Jinyue had closed. That is singing. Her voice is a typical loud white voice. Singing only with the throat, without any breath changes or resonance. Moreover, none of the lines sung were in tune. Shen Yu opened his mouth to say something, but seeing how devoted Jinyue was, he sighed but didn't interrupt her. 2 minutes later, Jinyue stopped singing and said with a smug look on her face, "Well, I sang pretty well, didn't I?" Luo Zhi looked at Jinyue, who looked very proud, and the expression on her face was hard to describe. Shen Yu was speechless. I actually wanted to say it was pretty good, but I don't want to lie to you. Your performance was just average. Your singing of this song was unfamiliar to me. It felt familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. I knew the lyrics, but I didn't recognize the tune. Hearing Shen Yu say this, Luo Zhi couldn't hold back any longer and burst into laughter. Jinyue's face turned pale and she glared at Luo Zhi and Shen Yu fiercely. She also knows that her singing is not that good. So I seldom sing in front of outsiders. I only sing it in front of my family or people I know very well. But Shen Yu said it so bluntly, it was really disrespectful. Seeing that Jinyue was angry, Shen Yu touched his nose awkwardly. There was nothing he could do, as she simply had no talent for singing. It is no exaggeration to say that. Jinyue's vocal condition. It is comparable to the big baby who sang the love offering in the previous life. Shen Yu's hands were swollen from signing books. Of course, it is impossible to cook in the evening. Jinyue drove the two of them to a nearby private restaurant. The three of them asked for a small private room. I simply ordered some dishes I liked. Luo Zhi looked at Jinyue, who was still unhappy. Smiling and comforting. Okay, don't be angry. It's Shen Yu's fault. He really didn't give you face. How can you talk to a girl like that? Chapter 108, The Emperor's Treatment. As she said this, Luo Zhi gave Shen Yu a look. After Shen Yu saw it, he immediately said with a look of remorse, "It's my fault. I shouldn't have said that to you. Jinyue, I apologize to you. Actually, your voice is pretty good." Jinyue glared at Shen Yu fiercely when she heard this. Although I knew he was lying to me, I still felt happy. After the dishes are served, the three of them started eating. It was already past 7 o'clock and they were all feeling hungry. However, Shen Yu's right hand was swollen like a pig's hoof because of signing books. After picking up the chopsticks, my hands started shaking. Seeing this, Luo Zhi picked up some food from the plate and placed it next to Shen Yu's mouth. He smiled and said, "Don't use the chopsticks. You can't even pick up the food with your hands. Open your mouth and I'll feed you." Shen Yu smiled awkwardly when he heard this. Only then did he open his mouth and put the piece of fried meat in front of him into his mouth. When Jinyue saw the two of them being so affectionate with each other, she became extremely jealous. She picked up the braised pork in front of her, also handed to Shen Yu's mouth. Shen Yu was stunned at this moment, and stood there at a loss. Jinyue said with a cold face, "Open your mouth. You can't let Luo Zhi feed you all the time. She needs to eat too." Shen Yu heard this and felt that what she said made a lot of sense. He nodded, then opened his mouth and put the braised pork into his mouth. After seeing Shen Yu eat the food he picked, Jinyue was immediately delighted, and the smile on her face became even wider. As soon as she turned around, she met Luo Zhi's teasing gaze. I lowered my head in embarrassment. She knew that this excuse had fooled Shen Yu, but not Luo Zhi. I dared not to look her in the eye. She is openly poaching people. But Luo Zhi didn't care about these. She knew clearly that, with Shen Yu's current strength and potential, in the future, there will be more and more cases of people offering themselves for sex. If she cares about these things, then she won't have to do anything in the future. Just stay by Shen Yu's side all the time. That's all. With the help of two top beauties, Shen Yu filled his stomach without even doing anything. After finishing his meal, Shen Yu leaned back in his chair and said with a satisfied look on his face, "Do you think the way they were eating just now is similar to the emperors of the ancient feudal empire, where people feed the food to them without even moving their chopsticks?" Luo Zhi and Jinyue both spit when they heard this. He rolled his eyes at Shen Yu in annoyance. This guy really wants to be the emperor. Jinyue thought of his 3 wives and 4 concubines, her face blushed, and she scolded him. "Dream on with your dreams." When Shen Yu heard this, his little face was filled with confusion. I don't understand how I have offended Jinyue. In a coffee shop near Capitalan Plaza, Zhu Ji was sitting in front of Lin Feiwan, comforting her softly. Lin Feiwan's eyes were slightly red at this time. "No, I still have to find Shen Yu and ask him why he is with Luo Zhi." Seeing this, Zhu Ji quickly stopped him and said, "It will be useless if you go now. The incident has already happened. You should calm down first. Even if you go, it will only further aggravate the conflict." Lin Feiwan heard this and said angrily, Luo Zhi is such a bad woman. She took advantage of me. I didn't like her before, but now I hate her even more. Zhu Ji didn't want Lin Feiwan to be so angry that she lost her mind. She also understood that Luo Zhi was not wrong in all this. He immediately explained. Luo Zhi did nothing wrong. You forgot that you were the one who abandoned Shen Yu first. You two have both received your divorce certificates. Lin Feiwan was stunned for a moment after hearing this, and said angrily, I misunderstood Shen Yu. I thought he was not ambitious. I actually like him very much. Whose side are you on? Zhu Ji sighed when he heard this. I thought to myself, I am on my own side. At the same time, the internet became lively again because of Shen Yu. Many fans who received Shen Yu's autograph posted it on their social networking sites. Uploaded an autographed photo of Shen Yu. Immediately, there was an uproar on the internet. Now everyone knows. It turns out that the mysterious author of the phenomenal novel Ghost Blows Out the Light is Shen Yu. Netizens who learned of this news. They also sighed and wondered what Shen Yu couldn't do. Many netizens in Shanghai secretly cursed themselves for not going to Capitaland Mall. In order not to disappoint his fans, Shen Yu. 2,000 copies of the book were signed, which touched many fans who liked the book. They all said that they did not like the wrong person. The media that interviewed Shen Yu today rushed to publish articles. It pushed Shen Yu directly to the climax. Shen Yu instantly dominated the hot search headlines on Weibo. Hash hash shocked, the author of Ghost Blows Out the Light is actually him. Hash hash. Hash hash piano talent Luo Zhi announces her love relationship hash hash. Hash hash to Luo Zhi hash hash. Hash hash Shen Yu's girlfriend turned out to be her hash hash. Hash hash what else can't he do hash hash. Hash hash what poem did Shen Yu send hash hash. Hash hash what is it like to sign 2,000 books in a row hash hash. For a time, the entire internet was flooded with news about Shen Yu. In a courtyard house in Beijing, a middle-aged man in a suit and leather shoes, who looked to be in his 30s, suddenly rushed into the study. In the study, an old man who is over 50 years old and looks energetic, standing at the table practicing calligraphy. Being disturbed like this, my hands trembled. A good piece of calligraphy is ruined like this. He immediately put down the brush in his hand, looked up at the middle-aged man who came in, and said unhappily, Why are you so impatient? You are so grown up but you don't have any self-control at all. The middle-aged man didn't care when he heard this. He raised his phone and said, Dad, Luo Zhi is performing publicly again. When the old man heard this, his eyes suddenly brightened and he said, Really? Miss Luo Zhi is going to perform again. Which concert hall will it be in? Please book a ticket for me as soon as possible. This girl is extremely talented. I think she will soon become a piano master. Then my burden will be much lighter. That's right, the old man in front of me. He is the only piano master in China today, Mr. Chu Lixin. Upon hearing this, the middle-aged man quickly explained. Dad, it wasn't a concert hall, it was the entrance of a music store, and he only played one song. Mr. Chu was stunned when he heard this. After reacting, he sighed and said, Oh, I thought the little girl was going to hold a piano recital. I was so happy for nothing. It seems that this girl is planning to become a piano master and hold a piano recital. Forget it, just play the video of the little girl playing the piano and let me listen to it. It's better than nothing. The middle-aged man turned on his phone and said with a smile, Dad, this is a new piano piece. Please give your comments after listening to it. Chapter 109 Simple, yet not simple. Mr. Chu heard this. I suddenly became interested. Oh? A newly composed piano piece. I'd really like to listen to it carefully. As he said this, he sat on the chair and closed his eyes. Seeing this, the middle-aged man also turned on the play button of the video. The next second, the piano piece dedicated to Luo Zhi started playing in the study. At the beginning, Mr. Chu still looked relaxed. Listen with an attitude of receiving guidance. But as each note was played, Mr. Chu's expression became more solemn. He placed his hands gently on his thighs and clapped his hands to the beat. After the song ended, Mr. Chu was still immersed in the artistic conception depicted in the music and couldn't extricate himself. After a while, The old man suddenly opened his eyes, and a bright light flashed in his eyes. As bright as a candle in the dark. He stood up excitedly, looked at the middle-aged man, and couldn't help but exclaimed. What a good song, what a good song. As a piano master, he definitely sees things more deeply than most people. Is this song Luo Zhi difficult to play? It's not difficult. It can even be said to be very simple. From top piano masters to ordinary piano beginners. It only takes some time to play it completely. It is precisely because this piece of music is not difficult. Plus the theme of the piano music, it is the everlasting love. Therefore, this piano piece must be very popular. But, although the music is relatively simple, but playing well is not an easy thing. Instead, it has a taste of simplicity. Because the simpler it is, the less it reflects the level of skill. In terms of emotional expression and driving the audience's emotions, the level is obvious at a glance. The middle-aged man looked at his father's excited face and said with a smile, Dad, how is it? Give me some comments. Mr. Chu Lixin stroked his beard and said with a smile, This piece of music is perfect. It is written in a rondo form, which is very innovative. It consists of an overlapping section and 2 interludes. This is the first time I have seen this technique, but the effect is surprisingly good. The story in the music is also very complete and fascinating. It is an absolutely good piece of music with high artistry and expressiveness. As he spoke, the old man picked up the cup and drank some water. After moistening his throat, he continued. This is a new piece of music composed by an international piano master. It is indeed of a very high standard. I dare to say that this piece of music alone will be enough to make him famous around the world. The middle-aged man heard this, smiled, and said cunningly, Dad, how do you know it was created by an international master? Maybe it was created by Luo Zhi. Seeing this, Mr. Chu rolled his eyes at his son. This piano piece is obviously written by a man for his beloved. Are you stupid? The middle-aged man heard this and smiled awkwardly. This piece of music was not composed by a foreign piano master, but was written by a young man in our country named Shen Yu, specifically for Luo Zhi. The name of the piece is to Luo Zhi. When Mr. Chu heard this, he was immediately surprised. Somewhat shocked. It was created by someone from our country. Does he have any other works? The middle-aged man shook his head and said, He is a singer who has become quite popular recently. He has written several very good songs. For now, we only know that he has composed this piano piece. Upon hearing this, Mr. Chu sighed with regret. Then he spoke again. But this piano piece is enough to make Shen Yu gain a foothold in the piano world. By the way, please find this young man's songs so I can listen to them. When Mr. Chu was discussing Shen Yu, at the same time, in another courtyard house in the capital, Mr. Fong Bingwen was also pacing back and forth in his own small courtyard. My heart felt like it was being scratched by a kitten, and it was full of anxiety. Half an hour ago, Zhao Gang brought him a phone number. I told him that Shen Yu was the author of Ghost Blows Out the Light. And tell him, at Shen Yu's new book launched today, I wrote a poem for each of the 2 women. When he heard this, he couldn't help himself. I couldn't wait to ask about the content of the 2 poems. But Zhao Gang told him that he himself did not know the content of the 2 poems. As a person who loves literature very much, this is a little unbearable for him. After thinking for a long time, then he took out his cell phone and called Shen Yu. Shen Yu had returned home at this time, sitting on the sofa and chatting with Luo Zhi and Jinyue. Suddenly the phone on the table rang. When I saw it was Mr. Fong calling, I answered the call immediately. As soon as the call was connected, Mr. Fong's somewhat anxious voice immediately came through their microphone. Shen Yu, I hope I didn't disturb you. No, I'm fine right now. Mr. Fong, is there anything you want to talk to me about? Mr. Fong said somewhat embarrassedly. Nothing, I just heard from Zhao Gang that you wrote 2 new poems today. I wonder if I can let this old man appreciate them. Shen Yu heard this and thought for a while before saying, Mr. Fong, these 2 poems were given to my friends privately. They happen to be here. I can ask them for you. If they don't mean to make them public, then I'm sorry I can't tell you. Mr. Fong was stunned for a few seconds after hearing this. Then he smiled and said, Okay. Then ask for me. It's okay if you don't want to. I'm just simply curious. Shen Yu put down his phone. He looked at Luo Zhi and the other person and said, Mr. Fong wants to appreciate the poem I wrote for you too. Are you willing? The two girls who were playing and fighting on the sofa suddenly became quiet. Mr. Fong is a great figure in the literary world. Logically speaking, since they called me specifically, I should let them enjoy it. But the two of them were somewhat unhappy at the moment. Because this was the poem Shen Yu gave to them, they didn't want to make it public and only wanted to know it themselves. After they returned home, they all tacitly did not mention this topic. Even they didn't know what poem Shen Yu gave to the other party. Luo Zhi frowned slightly. After thinking for a while, he looked at Shen Yu. Said carefully, Ayu, can I refuse? I don't want to make this poem public. Jinyue, who was standing by, was as if she had been pardoned, and said quickly, I don't want to make it public either. Shen Yu nodded, then picked up the phone and said, Mr. Fong, I'm sorry, they don't want to make it public. Mr. Fong on the other end of the phone was a little disappointed, but still said cheerfully, It's okay, it's okay. It's just my personal hobby. When they are willing to make it public, it won't be too late for me to appreciate it. Afterwards, the two continued chatting for a while before hanging up the phone.